The first thing I noticed was the boat had no sound. No engine. No splash. No movement at all. It just drifted through the fog like something pushed it there from underneath the water. I was parked near Mile Creek around 2 in the morning when my spotlight caught the side of the hull sliding between the reeds. The swamp was dead quiet that night. No frogs, no insects. Even the wind felt wrong. That was the first thing that bothered me. Swamps are never silent. I stepped out of the patrol truck and felt mud sink around my boots. The air smelled thick, wet wood, rotting plants, that sour swamp smell that sticks inside your nose for hours. The boat bumped softly against the muddy bank. Thunk. Then it stopped. I stood there for a second with my flashlight pointed at it, waiting for someone to sit up or call for help. Nobody did. The boat was small, aluminum fishing boat, old green paint peeling off the sides, one lantern hanging near the seat. Still lit. That made my stomach tighten. I moved closer slowly, hand resting near my holster. My radio crackled once with static, then went quiet again. "Dispatch, I've got an abandoned vessel near Mile Creek," I whispered, possibly related to the missing persons report from earlier. No response. Only static. I looked back at the trees behind me. Cypress trunks rose out of black water like crooked bones. Spanish moss hung from the branches. In the fog, it looked almost gray. The boat touched the shore again. Thunk. I climbed down carefully and grabbed the side rail. Cold. Ice cold. Inside the boat, there was a tackle box, 2 fishing poles, and a small cooler full of melted ice. But no fishermen. Just water pooled near the floorboards. And something else. Mud. Thick dark mud smeared across the inside of the boat, like someone climbed in with filthy boots. I swept my flashlight lower. The footprints stopped halfway through the boat. Like whoever made them had simply vanished. I remember staring at that for way too long. My brain kept trying to make sense of it. Maybe he fell overboard. Maybe another boat picked him up. Maybe I was just tired. But none of those thoughts explained the footprints ending in the middle of the boat. My radio finally crackled alive. "Deputy Harris, you copy?" I grabbed it too fast. "Yeah, I copy." "You located the fishermen." "Found the boat empty." A pause. Then dispatch asked quietly, "Is it the same one?" I frowned. "What do you mean same one?" Another pause. "Longer this time." "Never mind," she said. "Sheriff wants you to tow it in." Before I could ask what she meant, the signal died again. I stared at the radio. The same one. Something about the way she said it sat wrong with me. I tied the boat to the dock near the old ranger station around 3 in the morning. By then the fog had thickened so badly, I could barely see the opposite side of the water. The station itself looked half dead. Peeling paint. One yellow light above the door flickering every few seconds. I finished paperwork inside while rain tapped softly against the windows. Missing fisherman's name was Walter Grin. 62 years old. Local. Last seen heading into Mile Creek before sunset. Sheriff Collins walked in while I was reading the report. He looked tired, older than usual. "You found it?" he asked. "The boat, yeah." He nodded slowly like he already knew. Then he poured himself cold coffee from the machine near the wall. "You check inside carefully." "Yeah." "You see anything strange?" I hesitated. I almost mentioned the footprints. But something stopped me. "Not really," I lied. The sheriff stared at me over the rim of his cup. I could tell he didn't believe me. Then he looked past me toward the dark windows. "The creek been bad lately," he muttered. "What does that mean?" He didn't answer. Instead, he asked, "You ever hear about Bellamy?" I shook my head. The sheriff leaned back against the counter. Deputy disappeared out there in '98. Swamp patrol. Boat came back empty 3 days later. A cold feeling crawled up my neck. The same boat. Sheriff Collins nodded once. Neither of us spoke after that. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere far away. And for just a second, I thought I heard something hit the dock outside. Thunk. My head turned toward the window instantly. The sheriff noticed. "You hear that?" I nodded slowly. We both stepped outside. Rain misted through the floodlights. The dock creaked softly beneath our boots. The boat was gone. The rope I tied earlier floated loose in the water. I froze. "That's impossible," I whispered. Then the sheriff pointed toward the reeds. About 30 yards away, barely visible through the fog, the boat drifted slowly across the water again. Silent. Lantern still glowing. My chest tightened. Nobody was rowing. Nobody steering. Yet it moved steady through the swamp like it knew exactly where it was going. The sheriff cursed under his breath. "Leave it," he snapped. "What?" "Leave it alone." "But..." "Just leave the damn thing." His voice sounded sharper than I'd ever heard before. Fear. Real fear. That scared me more than the boat. The sheriff walked back toward the station without another word. I stayed there watching the lantern disappear deeper into the fog. Then I saw something move behind it. At first, I thought it was a tree branch, but it stood too tall. A dark shape rising from the water behind the drifting boat. Human-shaped. Almost. I lifted my flashlight quickly. Nothing there. Only fog moving over black water. I told myself I imagined it. I kept telling myself that all the way home. But around 5 in the morning, my phone rang beside the bed. "Dispatch." I answered half asleep. "Deputy Harris." "Yeah. You need to come back." I sat up immediately. "What happened?" The woman on dispatch sounded nervous. "The boat came back again." Rain hammered my windshield, the entire drive back to Mile Creek. Sunrise hadn't reached the swamp yet. Everything looked blue-gray and dead. When I arrived, 2 deputies stood near the shoreline with flashlights. The boat rested against the mud, exactly where I first found it. Thunk. Thunk. Small waves pushed it gently against shore, like it had never left. I stepped closer slowly, and that's when I noticed something new. The lantern was gone. One of the deputies looked pale. "You should see this." He pointed inside the boat. The mud was still there. The footprints too. Except now they continued farther. One more step than before. Just one. Closer to shore. I felt cold spread through my stomach. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Then one deputy whispered, "You think somebody climbed out?" I looked toward the swamp trees behind us. Dark water. Fog. Endless reeds swaying softly. And for the first time that night, I noticed another set of tracks leading away from the shoreline. Bare footprints. Deep in the mud. Heading into the trees. But none of us remembered seeing them when we arrived. I slowly raised my flashlight toward the swamp. The tracks disappeared into darkness. And somewhere far out in the reeds, something splashed once, then went silent again. By the third night, I stopped telling myself the lantern belonged to a real person. At first, I tried to explain it away. Some old fisherman. A hunter sneaking through protected land. Teenagers messing around in the swamp. But people don't move like that out there. And they definitely don't disappear every single time you get close. I saw it again just after midnight. A small orange light drifting between the reeds beyond Mile Creek. Slow, steady, not bobbing like a flashlight, not bright enough to be a boat lamp. An old lantern, the exact same kind, hanging from Walter Grin's missing boat. I sat frozen inside my patrol truck, watching it through the rain-streaked windshield. The swamp looked endless at night, black water stretching between cypress trees, fog hanging low over the surface, the kind of darkness that made distances feel wrong. The lantern moved deeper into the reeds, then stopped, like it was waiting. My radio crackled softly beside me. Deputy Harris, status check. I grabbed the mic without taking my eyes off the light. Yeah, I'm near Mile Creek again. A pause. Then dispatch asked quietly, you see it? The question hit me hard. Not what? It. I swallowed. You know about the lantern. Static hissed through the speaker for a few seconds. Then she said something strange. Don't follow it too far. The signal died immediately after. I stared at the radio. Rain tapped softly against the roof of the truck. Out in the swamp, the lantern started moving again. Further back this time. Like it heard the conversation. I should have left right there. Sheriff Collins already warned me. Everybody around the station acted weird whenever Mile Creek came up. But curiosity does something ugly to you after enough sleepless nights. It starts feeling heavier than fear. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped into the mud. Cold water soaked through my boots immediately. The swamp smelled stronger that night, rotting wood, wet moss, stagnant water. And underneath it, something sour, almost like decay. The lantern glowed faintly through the reeds ahead of me, maybe 50 yards out. I kept moving toward it carefully. Branches scraped against my jacket, mosquitoes buzzed near my ears. Somewhere nearby, water shifted softly. Not splashing, just moving, like something large sliding beneath the surface. I stopped walking. The lantern stopped too. I remember that clearly. The moment I froze, it froze. A bad feeling crawled through my stomach. Sheriff's Department, I called out. You're trespassing in restricted wetlands. No answer. Only the sound of rain dripping through trees. Then the lantern drifted left slowly, deeper into the swamp. I kept following. My flashlight beam bounced across black water and tree trunks. Every shadow looked human for half a second before turning into branches again. I checked behind me once and realized I couldn't even see the road anymore. That bothered me more than anything else. The swamp had swallowed the world behind me. The lantern suddenly disappeared. Just gone. I stopped breathing for a second. Then I spotted it again farther ahead, at least 30 yards deeper than before. That wasn't possible. Nobody could move that fast through swamp water without making noise. I hurried forward now, pushing through reeds. My pulse thumped harder with every step. And then I found the boat. Walter Grin's fishing boat sat half hidden between cypress roots. The lantern hung near the front rail, glowing softly. Empty again. I moved closer slowly. Water lapped against the sides in slow little waves. Thunk, thunk. Same sound as before. The mud inside the boat looked worse now. More footprints. Bare footprints. I shined my light lower and felt my chest tighten. There were too many. Not one person. At least 6 or 7 overlapping tracks covering the floorboards. Some small, some large, all barefoot, like multiple people climbed inside after the boat drifted away. I backed up instinctively. That's when I noticed the cooler lid sitting open. It wasn't open before. I knew it was. Rainwater dripped from the edge. Something pale rested inside. For one horrible second, I thought it was meat. Then my flashlight settled properly. A hand. Human hand. Severed at the wrist. Gray skin. Water swollen. My body locked up. I couldn't breathe right. The fingers looked stiff and curled inward slightly like they were still holding something. And wrapped around one finger was Walter Grin's fishing line. I stumbled backward into the water. Cold swamp water splashed up my legs. My radio slipped from my belt and hit the mud. Static exploded from the speaker. Then a voice whispered through it. Not dispatch. Not anyone I knew. Just a low, broken voice. Still here. I grabbed the radio fast. Who is this? Static crackled again. Then, help me. The voice sounded wet, like somebody speaking underwater. I turned in circles trying to find where it came from. The swamp suddenly felt alive around me. Water moving, branches creaking, tiny ripples spreading across the surface nearby. Then came another sound, a lantern clinking softly. I swung my flashlight back toward the boat. The lantern was moving, not swaying from wind, lifting very slowly, like somebody unseen had picked it up. Every muscle in my body went tight. The lantern drifted off the boat and into the reeds. I saw no hand holding it, no person, just the light moving alone through darkness. My survival instincts finally kicked in. I turned and pushed back toward the road as fast as I could. Mud sucked at my boots, branches snapped against my face. My breathing sounded too loud. Behind me, I kept hearing the lantern clink softly through the swamp, following me. Not fast, never fast, just steady, like it knew I couldn't escape anyway. I finally reached the patrol truck shaking and soaked. The moment I slammed the door shut, the lantern disappeared. Gone again. I locked the doors immediately, even though that felt stupid. Then I looked down and realized something that made my stomach drop. The severed hand was gone too. I sat there breathing hard for several seconds. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe stress was messing with my head. But then I noticed muddy water dripping across the passenger seat. Fresh footprints. Bare. Small. Leading into the back seat. My blood went cold. I spun around instantly with my flashlight. Nothing there. Only darkness inside the cab. But the smell hit me immediately. Rotting water. Strong enough to make me gag. I jumped out of the truck and yanked the back door open. Empty. No footprints now. No water. Nothing. I stood there in the rain trying to steady my breathing. Then my headlights flickered once, twice, and for half a second, I saw someone standing across the road. Tall, thin, completely still, holding the lantern. The face was too dark to see, but I remember the shoulders, the clothes hanging wet against the body, and the way the head tilted slightly toward me, like it recognized me. The headlights flickered again. The figure was gone. I drove straight back to the station without stopping. Sheriff Collins was waiting outside under the awning when I arrived. He took one look at my face and knew something happened. "You followed it," he said quietly. I didn't answer. Rain poured off the roof behind him. Finally, I whispered, "There was a hand in the boat." The sheriff's expression changed instantly. Not shock, not confusion, recognition. That scared me worse than anything else that night. He looked past me toward the swamp road, disappearing into darkness. Then he said something I still think about all the time. That means it's getting closer. I stared at him. What's getting closer? But he never answered. And somewhere far beyond the trees, through the rain and fog, I saw the lantern glowing again, closer to town than before. The voices started 3 nights after I saw the lantern near town. At first, I thought they were radio interference. Broken signals, static bouncing through swamp weather. That happens sometimes down here. Storms roll over the wetlands and mess with frequencies. You hear pieces of conversations from truckers, Coast Guard channels, even old emergency broadcasts. But those voices knew my name. That's what changed everything. I was alone near Mile Creek around 1 in the morning when it happened the first time. Rain had stopped an hour earlier, but fog still covered the water thick as smoke. My patrol boat drifted slowly through narrow channels while the motor idled low behind me. The swamp felt different lately. Too still. Even the alligators had disappeared. Normally, you'd catch their eyes in the flashlight beam near shore, little orange reflections above the waterline. But now there was nothing. Just black water and trees. My radio crackled suddenly. Eris. I looked down immediately. Static hissed through the speaker. Then again. Deputy Harris. The voice sounded distant. Weak. Like someone whispering through water. I grabbed the mic. Dispatch, repeat. No answer. Only static. Then came a sound underneath it. Breathing. Slow, wet breathing. I felt cold crawl into my shoulders. Dispatch. The radio popped loudly. Help me. I nearly dropped it. The voice sounded familiar somehow. Old, exhausted. Then another voice joined it. And another. Whispers overlapping each other beneath the static. Too quiet to fully understand. But I heard my name again. Harris. The boat drifted sideways gently. Water slapped against the hull. Thunk. Thunk. That sound again. I shut the radio off completely. The silence afterward somehow felt worse. I sat there staring into the fog, trying to calm my breathing. Then I noticed the water beside the boat moving. Not waves. Not fish. Something underneath was circling slowly. I grabbed the spotlight and pointed it down. The beam cut through black water. For a second, I saw nothing. Then pale shapes appeared below the surface. Human faces. My heart nearly stopped. 3 of them drifting beneath the boat. Eyes open. Skin swollen gray. Their mouths moving slowly underwater like they were trying to speak. I jerked backward hard enough to rock the boat. The light slipped from my hand and swung wildly across the swamp. When I grabbed it again and looked back down. Nothing. Only murky water. I stared so hard my eyes started burning. There was nothing there anymore. No bodies. No faces. Just darkness beneath the boat. I kept telling myself it was swamp debris. Floating logs. My imagination. But deep down, I already knew I was lying to myself. Because one of those faces looked exactly like Walter Grin. The ride back to the ranger station felt longer than usual. Fog crowded the water so thick I could barely see the front of the boat. Every few seconds, I thought I saw movement beside me. Something packing the boat underwater. The engine suddenly sputtered once. Then died. My stomach dropped. The swamp became silent instantly. No motor noise. No insects. Nothing. I tried restarting the engine. It clicked uselessly. Again. Nothing. I checked my fuel line with shaking hands, while the boat drifted deeper into the reeds. Then I heard splashing nearby. Slow, deliberate splashing, like someone walking through shallow water. I turned off the spotlight instinctively. The darkness became complete. I could hear it circling now. Splash. Pause. Splash. Closer each time. My hand rested on my pistol, even though I knew how useless it felt out there. The splashing stopped beside the boat. Right beside me. I held my breath. Then came a voice from the darkness. Soft. Barely above a whisper. You left us. I froze. The voice sounded human. Close enough to touch. I couldn't move. Couldn't even breathe properly. Water dripped somewhere nearby. Then the voice came again. We waited. The boat shifted slightly beneath me like something leaned against it from underneath. My pulse hammered so hard it hurt. I finally forced myself to grab the flashlight and snap it on. The beam cut across empty water. Nothing there, but fresh, wet handprints covered the side of the boat. Long gray streaks dripping slowly downward. I scrambled backward so fast I nearly fell. Then the engine suddenly roared back to life on its own. I didn't question it. I shoved the throttle forward and sped through the swamp as fast as the channel allowed. Behind me, I swear I heard voices rising from the water together. Not screaming, calling, like they wanted me to come back. The ranger station looked almost comforting when I reached it. Yellow lights glowing through fog. Sheriff Collins stood outside smoking beneath the awning. He frowned the moment he saw me step off the boat. You look like hell. I wiped water from my face, something talking through the radio. The sheriff didn't react the way normal people would. No confusion. No disbelief. He just looked tired. Did it say your name? That question hit me hard. I stared at him silently. He sighed and crushed the cigarette beneath his boot. Come inside. Rain started again while we sat inside the station office. Old ceiling fan turning overhead. Coffee machine humming softly in the corner. Sheriff Collins opened a filing cabinet near his desk and pulled out an old cassette tape. Real old. Dust covering the plastic case. What is that? I asked. Dispatch recordings. He slid the tape toward me. From '98. My chest tightened immediately. Deputy Bellamy. The missing swamp patrol officer. The one whose boat came back empty. Sheriff Collins inserted the tape into an old recorder on the desk. Static filled the office. Then came a man's voice. Calm at first. Routine patrol updates. Coordinates. Weather conditions. But after a minute his tone changed. You hearing that? Bellamy whispered through the tape. Static crackled louder. Then faintly beneath it. Voices. Wet whispering voices. Exactly like mine. I felt sick instantly. Bellamy's breathing grew heavier on the recording. Then he said something that made my skin crawl. They know my name. Sheriff Collins shut the tape off. Silence filled the room. Rain tapped softly against the windows. How long has this been happening? I asked quietly. The sheriff rubbed his tired eyes. Longer than me. I stared at him. What's in that swamp? He looked toward the dark windows. For a second, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said something strange. It wasn't always swamp. A cold feeling spread through me. What does that mean? There used to be a town out there. I frowned. No, there didn't. Yes, he whispered, before the flood. The office suddenly felt colder. The sheriff leaned back slowly. Whole place disappeared underwater after a hurricane back in the 40s. Houses, Roads, church, people. Lightning flashed outside briefly. The windows glowed white for half a second. Then darkness returned. They recovered some bodies, he continued quietly. Not all of them. I felt my stomach tighten. And now, Sheriff Collins looked directly at me. Now they call people into the water. Neither of us spoke after that. Then the dispatch radio crackled loudly from the front desk. A woman screamed through the speaker. Not dispatch. Not anyone we knew. Just raw panic and choking sobs. Please. Static cut across the transmission violently. Then came bubbling sounds. Water. Gasping. And finally one last whisper. Underneath. The radio died completely. The sheriff moved fast after that. Too fast for somebody surprised. He grabbed his coat immediately. What was that? I asked. But he was already heading for the door. Then he stopped suddenly. Just stood there listening. I noticed it too a second later. A faint sound outside. Water dripping. Slow footsteps crossing the dock. Not boots. Bare feet. Wet skin slapping softly against wood. The sheriff looked at me carefully. And for the first time since this whole thing started, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. Because the footsteps had stopped directly outside the station door. And then someone knocked softly from the other side. 3 slow knocks. Wet. Heavy. Patient. The thing outside the station door knew we were inside. I felt that immediately. Not because it knocked again. Because it stopped making noise completely afterward. No footsteps. No breathing. Nothing. Just silence standing on the other side of the door. Sheriff Collins slowly rested his hand on the shotgun mounted beside the desk. I could hear rain dripping from the roof outside, water moving softly against the dock. Then came a weak voice through the wood. Please. I froze. Walter grinned. It sounded exactly like him. The sheriff didn't move. Don't open it, he whispered. The voice came again. Softer this time. I'm cold. Every hair on my arm stood up. I'd heard Walter's voice earlier that week in old voicemail recordings from his family. Same rough tone, same slow drawl. But something about it felt wrong. Like the voice was being copied by something that didn't fully understand human speech. Another knock hit the door. Wet. Heavy. Please let me in. I looked toward the sheriff. He looked terrified. Not cautious. Terrified. Then the voice changed. Not all at once. Slowly. Like a tape warping. Walter's voice stretched thinner until it became something deeper. Drowned. You left us. The sheriff grabbed my arm hard. We're going now. What is that? But he already shoved open the back office door. Rain blasted into us instantly as we stepped onto the rear dock behind the station. Wind pushed through the swamp hard enough to bend the reeds sideways. The sheriff untied the patrol boat with shaking hands. Hurry. I climbed in while he started the engine. The front door of the station slammed open behind us. I turned instinctively. Something stood inside the doorway, beneath the yellow station light. Tall, thin, covered in dripping black water. Its face looked almost human until the light shifted across it. The skin hung too loose, eyes too dark, and its mouth kept moving slightly like it was whispering to itself. Then more shapes appeared behind it inside the station. 3, 4, maybe more, all standing silently in the dark office. The sheriff slammed the throttle forward. The boat shot into the swamp channel while rain hammered the water around us. I kept looking back. The figures never followed. They just watched us leave, like they already knew where we were going. The sheriff barely spoke during the ride. Lightning flashed across the swamp every few seconds, turning the trees white against the darkness. Finally, I shouted over the engine noise, "Where are we going?" Gator Bend. That name tightened something inside me immediately. I'd heard locals mention it before. Old trapping grounds deep in the swamp. Nobody used them anymore. Too flooded. Too isolated. Sheriff Collins kept staring ahead into the rain. "He's there," he muttered. "Walter." The sheriff nodded once. "Or what's left of him." Cold fear settled into my chest. The boat cut through narrow channels deeper than I'd ever patrolled before. Trees crowded closer together. Moss dragged across my shoulders as we passed beneath low branches. The swamp smelled worse out there. Rot. Dead fish. Something older underneath it. The farther we traveled, the quieter everything became. No frogs. No birds. Even the engine sounded muted somehow. Then I noticed lights ahead. Tiny orange glows moving between the trees. Lanterns. At least 6 of them. My stomach dropped. "They found us," I whispered. But the sheriff shook his head slowly. "No," he said, "they're guiding us." That answer felt even worse. The lanterns drifted deeper into the swamp ahead of the boat, never close enough to fully see, just distant orange lights weaving through fog. Like people walking through water. I kept hearing whispers beneath the engine noise now. Soft voices drifting across the swamp. Sometimes they sounded nearby. Sometimes directly beside me. One of them sounded like my mother for a second. That scared me more than anything, because my mother died 8 years ago. I shut my eyes hard and gripped the edge of the boat tighter. The sheriff noticed. "Don't listen to them. You hear it too." He didn't answer. That was answer enough. About 20 minutes later, the trees finally opened around a stretch of black water. And there it was. Gator Bend. The trapping camp looked half swallowed by the swamp. 3 old cabins leaning crooked above the waterline on wooden stilts, broken docks disappearing into reeds, rusted animal traps hanging from poles like bones. One lantern still burned near the largest cabin. Warm yellow light glowing through rain. I stared at it. "Someone's here." The sheriff cut the engine. The sudden silence pressed against my ears. Then came the sound. A man coughing weakly somewhere ahead. Human. Real. I grabbed my flashlight immediately. "Walter." No answer. Only another cough. Weak and wet. The sheriff stepped out first onto the old dock. The wood creaked beneath his boots. I followed close behind with my pistol drawn. Rain dripped through holes in the cabin roof. Everything smelled moldy and rotten. But mixed into it now was another smell. Blood. Fresh blood. The coughing came again from inside the largest cabin. I moved toward the doorway slowly. My flashlight beam shook slightly against the walls. Then I saw him. Walter Grin sat slumped against the far wall beside an old cot. Alive. At least I thought he was alive. His skin looked pale gray beneath the lantern light. Wet clothes hung loosely from his body. His beard dripped water onto his chest. But his eyes were open. And he was breathing. Relief hit me so hard my knees almost weakened. "Oh my God." Walter lifted his head slowly toward us. His lips trembled. "You shouldn't have come here." The sheriff moved carefully closer. "We're getting you out." Walter started shaking his head immediately. "No, no." His voice cracked badly. They hear everything now. I crouched beside him carefully. What happened to you? Walter stared toward the dark windows. For a second, tears filled his eyes. Then he whispered, "The water opened." A chill spread through my body. What does that mean? Walter's breathing quickened. I saw the church under the swamp. The sheriff closed his eyes briefly like he already knew. Walter grabbed my sleeve suddenly. His fingers felt freezing cold. There are people walking down there. I stared at him silently. In the water, I whispered. Walter nodded weakly. They keep calling names. The lantern flickered hard beside us. Then every sound outside stopped. Rain, wind, everything. Walter's expression changed instantly. Pure terror. They found us. The cabin floor creaked outside. One slow footstep. Then another. The sheriff raised the shotgun immediately. I turned toward the doorway. A shape moved past the window. Tall, human-shaped, dripping water. Then another silhouette appeared behind it. Then another. My pulse exploded in my chest. Walter started crying softly. They won't let people leave. Something knocked gently against the cabin wall outside. 3 slow knocks. Exactly like the station door. The lantern dimmed lower. I could hear whispering, now surrounding the cabin from every direction. Dozens of voices overlapping together. Not angry. Not loud. Just patient. Like they'd been waiting a very long time. The sheriff backed toward the door carefully. We move now. Walter grabbed him desperately. No boats. What? They come through the water. The whispering outside grew louder. Then came the sound that still wakes me up sometimes. Splashing. Not one person. Many. Moving around the cabin beneath us. The old floorboards trembled slightly. Something bumped the dock outside. Thunk. 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 I stepped toward the window and aimed my flashlight downward through the rain. Bodies stood in the water below the cabin. At least 10 of them. Motionless. Half submerged. Pale faces tilted upward toward us. Eyes open. Mouths moving softly. Whispering our names. My hands started shaking uncontrollably. One of them lifted its arm slowly toward me. And hanging from its wrist was Deputy Bellamy's old patrol watch. The sheriff saw it too, his face completely drained of color. Then Walter whispered something behind me that made everything worse. They're not dead. I turned slowly toward him. Walter's eyes looked hollow now, almost empty. They drowned, he whispered, but they kept waking back up. The lantern suddenly went out. Darkness swallowed the cabin instantly. And underneath us, something enormous moved through the water. The radio woke me up at 2:13 in the morning. Not dispatch. Not static. A man breathing hard into the mic. Then one sentence. Unit 14 requesting backup. I sat upright in bed instantly. The voice sounded distorted, buried under crackling interference, but something about it felt wrong enough to kill all sleep immediately. I grabbed the radio from the nightstand. Unit 14, identify location. For a second, I heard only rain hitting my trailer roof. Then the voice returned. Highway 37, South Access Road. The transmission cut sharply. Static filled the speaker again. I stared at the clock beside my bed. 2:14 a.m. My chest already felt tight. Unit 14 didn't exist anymore. Not officially. It was an old patrol designation retired years ago after a deputy disappeared during flood season, near the swamp road south of town. Deputy Ray Mercer. Older deputies still mentioned him sometimes when storms rolled in. Mostly as a joke. At least that's what I used to think. The radio crackled again. This time louder. Vehicle submerged, please. Then screaming. Not loud screaming. Distant. Like somebody trapped far away underwater. The signal died completely after that. I sat there listening to silence. Rain poured harder outside. I should have ignored it. Honestly, every part of me wanted to. But something about the fear in that voice stayed in my head. Real fear. Not a prank. I threw on my jacket and headed for the station. The roads were almost empty. Rainwater flooded the shoulders near the swamp line. My headlights barely cut through the fog hanging low over Highway 37. Everything looked washed out and gray. Dead. Sheriff Collins was already awake when I arrived. That alone bothered me. He stood near the dispatch desk drinking coffee like he'd been expecting someone. I held up the radio. You heard it too. The sheriff looked tired immediately. Older somehow. Yeah. Who was that? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked toward an old map hanging beside the office wall. Then he pointed near the lower end of Highway 37. South Access Road. Middle of the flood zone. My stomach tightened. That area's been underwater for years. The sheriff nodded slowly. That's where Mercer disappeared. Rain rattled against the station windows. I stared at the map. You think somebody's messing with us? No. The way he answered scared me. Not because of what he said. Because of how fast he said it. Like he already knew. 10 minutes later, we were driving south through heavy rain. The sheriff stayed unusually quiet during the ride. Windshield wipers scraped back and forth while dark swamp trees passed beside the road. Highway 37 always felt isolated at night. Long empty stretches with no houses. No gas stations. Nothing except swamp and flooded woods. But that night felt worse. The fog swallowed everything beyond the headlights. Even the road looked unfamiliar somehow. The sheriff finally spoke after several miles. Mercer called for backup 3 times before he vanished. I glanced toward him. They found the vehicle. Eventually. What happened? The sheriff tightened both hands on the steering wheel. That depends who you ask. Lightning flashed across the swamp outside. For half a second I saw flooded trees, standing in black water beside the highway. Then darkness returned. Dispatch crackled suddenly through the dashboard radio. But it wasn't our dispatcher. It was the same voice again. Weak. Broken. Please hurry. Then came bubbling sounds. Like someone choking underwater. The sheriff immediately grabbed the mic. Mercer, what's your location? Static hissed loudly. Then coordinates came through. Cold chills spread across my neck instantly. Because the coordinates matched a road that no longer existed. Old Marsh Route 12. Flooded decades ago. The sheriff looked pale now. But he kept driving. Eventually, the pavement narrowed into cracked side roads half covered in water. Tall reeds brushed against both sides of the cruiser. Road signs leaned crooked from storm damage. One of them caught my headlights briefly. Marsh Access Road, closed since 1998. The sheriff drove past it anyway. Water splashed beneath the tires as we pushed deeper into the flooded zone. The air outside looked strange. Fog moving too slowly. Almost drifting against the wind. Then I noticed abandoned cars near the roadside. Old rusted vehicles half sunken into mud. Flood damage. Most looked untouched for years. but one of them didn't. Fresh mud streaked the doors. Water still dripped from the bumper. The sheriff slowed the cruiser carefully. My flashlight swept across the windshield. Police markings. Old county unit. My pulse jumped. Stop the car. The sheriff already had. We stepped into ankle-deep floodwater beside the road. Rain soaked through my jacket immediately. The abandoned patrol vehicle sat crooked near the swamp edge. Unit 14. I felt my stomach twist. The paint looked old, faded, but the vehicle itself looked fresh somehow, like it hadn't been sitting there for years. Water trickled slowly from the open driver's door. I moved closer carefully. Mercer, I called. No answer. Only rain. Then I noticed the headlights, still glowing faintly. That wasn't possible. The sheriff saw it too. His face tightened. I leaned into the vehicle slowly. The inside smelled awful. Rotting water. Wet leather. Something metallic underneath. Blood. The radio inside crackled suddenly beside my head. I nearly jumped. Behind you. I spun around instantly. Nothing there. Just flooded road disappearing into fog. The sheriff stood several feet away, staring toward the swamp tree line. What is it? I whispered. He didn't answer. Then I heard it too. A distant siren. Low and muffled somewhere deeper in the flooded woods. Not modern. Older. The kind old patrol cruisers used years ago. The sound echoed weakly through fog. Then stopped. The sheriff grabbed his flashlight. He's leading us. I stared at him. You seriously believe that's Mercer? No, he said quietly. That answer somehow felt worse. We followed the sound off the road and into shallow floodwater between the trees. Mud sucked at my boots with every step. The farther we walked, the colder the air became. Then we found the skid marks. Long, deep tire grooves cutting through mud toward the swamp. My flashlight followed them downhill into black water. That's where the guardrail ended. Bent outward. Broken. Like something smashed through it years ago. The sheriff stopped moving. This is where they found the car. I looked toward the flooded drop-off. Dark water stretched between drowned trees below us. Rain rippled softly across the surface. Then lightning flashed overhead. For 1 second, the entire swamp lit up bright white. And I saw another patrol cruiser underwater, completely submerged beneath the surface. My breath caught instantly. The headlights were still on, glowing dimly through black water. I stumbled backward hard. That's impossible. The sheriff looked sick now. He whispered something under his breath I couldn't hear. Then the underwater headlights flickered once, and a shape moved inside the cruiser. Human, sitting in the driver's seat. I raised my flashlight with shaking hands. The water calmed again. The figure disappeared. Only the headlights remained glowing beneath the surface. Then the radio on my belt exploded with static. Mercer's voice screamed through it suddenly. Don't let HIM see you. The transmission cut violently. At the exact same moment, something splashed behind us. Close. Too close. We both turned instantly. A man stood knee-deep in floodwater between the trees. Deputy uniform. Old county badge. Face hidden by darkness and rain. Water poured steadily from his sleeves onto the swamp below. He didn't move. Didn't blink. Just stood there watching us silently from the fog. Then the headlights beneath, the water went out all at once. Darkness swallowed the swamp completely. And the man in the trees slowly raised one hand, pointing deeper into the flooded woods. The first thing I noticed was the coffee. It was still warm. That made no sense, because the shack had no power, no fire, no stove running, nothing that should have made heat out here in the middle of flooded Cypress Road. But the steam was real, rising slowly from a metal mug sitting on the broken wooden table. I froze at the doorway. My flashlight beam shook slightly across the interior. The hunting shack looked abandoned at first glance. Half-collapsed roof, mold creeping up the walls, old hunting gear scattered on the floor. But then I saw the footprints. Fresh, bare, cutting straight through the muddy floorboards like someone had walked in only minutes ago. I stepped back instinctively. Behind me, the swamp stayed silent. Too silent. No frogs, no wind, just water shifting far off in the dark like something was moving beneath it. Sheriff Collins stayed a few feet behind me. He didn't speak at first, just stared into the shack like he already regretted coming. "Someone's here," I whispered. The sheriff didn't answer. That bothered me more than anything else. I moved forward slowly, flashlight sweeping over the room again. The footprints led from the doorway to the table, then stopped, right beside the coffee mug. Like whoever made them just vanished mid-step. My stomach tightened. I crouched near the prints. The mud was fresh enough to smear on my fingers. Warm, not swamp cold, not old, recent. I looked up immediately. The sheriff had moved closer to the doorway now. His hand rested near his holster. "Don't touch anything," he said quietly. His voice didn't sound like an order. It sounded like a warning he wished he'd followed himself. A soft drip echoed somewhere inside the shack. Then another. I turned my flashlight toward the ceiling. Water leaked through broken wood, but the drops didn't match the steam coming from the coffee. The coffee was still steaming stronger now, like it had just been poured. I stood up slowly. "That's impossible," I said. Sheriff Collins finally stepped inside. The floor creaked under his weight. He scanned the room once, then twice, like he was looking for something he didn't want to find. "This place was cleared out years ago," he muttered. "Then who's making coffee?" He didn't answer. Instead, he walked toward a small corner shelf. Old supplies, rusted tools, empty cans. Then he stopped. His flashlight paused on something hanging from a nail in the wall. A sheriff badge. Old, faded, but still readable. Merchant County, Deputy Mercer. My throat tightened instantly. "That's him," I whispered. Sheriff Collins didn't move. He just stared at it like it confirmed something he'd been avoiding for a long time. Then I noticed something else. A second set of footprints. Not in mud. In water. Coming from the back of the shack. Fresh droplets leading toward a half-open door I hadn't noticed before. My pulse jumped. "There's a back room," I said. The sheriff nodded once, but he didn't follow immediately. That hesitation told me everything. Something about that room was wrong. Still, I stepped forward. The door creaked softly when I pushed it open. Inside was darkness, thicker than outside. My flashlight cut through it slowly. And that's when I saw the chair. A single wooden chair sitting in the middle of the room. A wet jacket draped over it. Steam rising from it too, like it had just been taken off. I stopped breathing for a second, because the jacket was moving slightly. Not wind, not vibration. Breathing. The fabric rode and fell gently like something inside it was still alive. Behind me, Sheriff Collins whispered, "Don't." But it was too late. The jacket slid off the chair, hit the floor with a wet slap. and something underneath the chair moved. Slowly, deliberately, I raised my flashlight instantly. Nothing, just the empty space beneath it. But the footprints appeared again, right there, forming out of nowhere. Fresh, one step at a time, walking out of the corner of the room, toward me. I backed up instinctively. The sheriff stepped inside fully now, raising his weapon. "Mercer," he called out firmly. No answer. The footprints stopped again, right between us, invisible weight in the air. Then a voice came from nowhere. Soft, wet, "Don't look at me." I froze. The voice wasn't coming from a direction. It was coming from everywhere inside the shack at once. Sheriff Collins tightened his grip on the shotgun. "Where are you?" Silence. Then the coffee mug behind us tipped over slowly, spilling onto the table. Fresh, still warm. My mind couldn't keep up anymore. This wasn't decay. This wasn't old swamp legend. This was immediate. Like someone was still here. Right now. Just unseen. The footprints shifted again. Closer. I felt my chest tighten. "Sir," I whispered to the sheriff, "we need to leave." But he didn't move. He was staring at the floor now, at something I couldn't see yet. Then he said something quietly. There were 2 men in Unit 14. My stomach dropped. "What?" He didn't look at me. Mercer wasn't alone. The air inside the shack suddenly felt colder. The footprints stopped moving, like they were listening. Then a second voice joined the first. Not speaking, breathing, right behind me. I turned instantly, flashlight sweeping. Nothing, but the wet jacket on the floor was gone. My skin went cold. It hadn't been dragged. It hadn't been moved. It had just disappeared. Sheriff Collins suddenly raised his weapon toward the corner. I followed his aim, and for a fraction of a second, I saw it, a shape standing just outside the reach of my flashlight. Tall, soaked, uniform clinging to its body. But the face wasn't clear. It kept shifting, like water refusing to hold form. Then it stepped forward slightly, and I saw the badge. Mercer, but wrong. The nameplate was rusted and half dissolved, like it had been underwater for years. My breath caught hard. The sheriff whispered he didn't come back alone. The figure tilted its head slowly, like it recognized us. Then the coffee mug on the table cracked, right down the middle. The sound echoed too, loud inside the shack. And every light I had flickered once. Hard. When it came back, the figure was closer. Too close. Standing right at the edge of the doorway now, blocking the exit. My heart slammed against my ribs. Sheriff Collins stepped forward slightly. Mercer, he said again, but his voice was different now. Less confident, more uncertain. The figure raised one hand slowly. Not aggressive, not attacking, just pointing, deep into the swamp behind us. Then it spoke again, this time clearer. Not one voice, 2, overlapping, still inside. The shack suddenly shook, not from wind, from something moving under it. The wooden floor creaked violently. Mud shifted beneath us. Sheriff Collins grabbed my arm instantly. "We're leaving," he said sharply. But when I looked back toward the doorway, the figure was gone. No sound, no splash, nothing. Only the open swamp outside waiting like it had swallowed everything. Then, from somewhere far behind the shack, a flashlight turned on, slowly, facing us, and moving closer through the reeds. Not alone. Multiple beams now, cutting through fog, approaching the shack from all sides. Sheriff Collins whispered something I barely heard. They found the site. My mouth went dry, because whatever was out there wasn't just Mercer anymore. And whatever was inside this swamp wasn't finished with us yet. The sheriff was already on the radio before I could even ask what was happening. His hand was shaking slightly, not enough for most people to notice. But I saw it. Dispatch, confirm Unit 14 transmission received. Static answered him. Long, uncomfortable. Then a voice came through. Calm. Too calm. Unit 14, no active transmission logged. The sheriff froze. I felt my stomach tighten instantly. That's not right, he said quietly. He pressed the mic again. I just heard a distress call, backup request, Highway 37. A pause. Then dispatch again. Same voice. Same tone. Negative. No calls received from Unit 14. The sheriff pulled the mic away, slowly like it burned him. I leaned closer. What do you mean no call? He didn't answer. He just stared at the radio like it had changed into something else. Something unfamiliar. Outside, rain hit the windshield in long, slow streaks. The swamp road ahead looked darker than before, like it was waiting. The sheriff finally spoke. I heard it too. That made my chest tighten. Because if he heard it, then it wasn't just me losing my mind. He turned the engine back on. We're going to dispatch. I looked at him. Why? His jaw tightened. Because they're lying. That word stayed in the air between us. Lying. It didn't make sense. Dispatch doesn't lie. Not about emergency calls. Not about officers in the field. But something about his voice told me he already knew this wasn't normal. The drive back felt longer than before. The swamp road seemed narrower, like the trees were leaning in closer. Every now and then, I thought I heard something over the radio again. But it was always just static. Soft, almost like breathing underneath it. When we reached the station, the lights were still on. Too bright for how late it was. Sheriff Collins didn't wait. He walked straight inside. I followed. The dispatch room was quiet. Only one operator was on duty. A young woman I didn't recognize well. She looked up when we entered. Everything okay? The sheriff didn't waste time. Pull Unit 14 logs from tonight. She blinked. Unit 14 doesn't have any active patrols. I felt a chill go down my spine. The sheriff stepped closer. I didn't ask that. His voice got sharper. I want every radio transmission from Highway 37 in the last hour. She hesitated, then started typing. The keyboard clicks felt too loud in the quiet room. I stood behind her, watching the screen. Line after line loaded. Nothing unusual. Routine patrol chatter. Weather updates. Traffic reports. But nothing from Unit 14. No distress call. No backup request. Nothing. The sheriff leaned closer. Scroll back further. She did. More logs appeared. Still nothing. I saw his face change slowly. Confusion first. Then something worse. Doubt. No, he whispered. I heard it. The operator looked nervous now. Sir, there's no record of any emergency call tonight. The room felt smaller, hotter, like the air had thickened. The sheriff turned to me slowly. "I heard screaming," he said quietly. I nodded. I did too. That silence after it hit harder than anything before. Because if both of us heard it, and no one recorded it, then something was wrong with the system itself. Or worse, with us. The operator suddenly frowned at the screen. "Wait." She clicked something. A different log opened. Old archive file. Her eyes scanned it quickly. Then she went still. "Sir, this is impossible." The sheriff stepped in. "What?" She pointed at the screen. Unit 14 was logged inactive during that time. He leaned closer. Then I saw it too. A timestamp. Same exact time we heard the call. But the status said, Unit 14, SDATONED. Not DPLOID. My stomach dropped. "That's wrong," I said immediately. I heard the call from them. They were on Highway 37. The operator shook her head slowly. There was no patrol assigned there. The sheriff didn't speak for a few seconds. Then quietly, "Then who was I talking to?" Nobody answered that. The room went completely still. Even the humming of the fluorescent lights felt louder. Then the radio on the desk crackled. All of us froze. A burst of static. Then a voice came through. "Soft. Broken. Please confirm." The operator jumped slightly. "That's not our frequency." The sheriff grabbed the mic instantly. "Unit 14, identify yourself." A long pause. Then something that made my skin go cold. Because the voice responded. Not clearly. Not fully. Just fragments. Still on highway. Then screaming again. Same as before. Distant. Underwater. The operator pulled back from the console. "I'm shutting it down." She reached for the power switch. The sheriff stopped her. "Wait." But the radio cut itself off before she even touched it. Silence returned instantly. The operator looked shaken now. "I'm telling you, there is no active channel open. That transmission shouldn't exist." The sheriff stared at the dead radio. His face looked different now. Like something had clicked in his mind. Something he didn't want to accept. Then he turned to me. "Get your gear." I frowned. "What?" "We're going back. To Highway 37. He nodded once. "But this time, we're not listening to the radio." That didn't make me feel better. It made it worse. Because now it meant he didn't trust anything coming from dispatch anymore. We left the station quickly. No one stopped us. Rain had started again outside. Heavy, thick, the kind that made headlights blur into long glowing streaks. The drive back felt heavier this time. Not because of the road. Because of silence. The radio stayed completely dead the entire way. No static. No voice. Nothing. That was the first thing that felt wrong. Because after everything we'd heard, silence shouldn't have felt this loud. We reached Highway 37 just before midnight. The sheriff slowed the vehicle. He pointed toward the road ahead. "Look." I followed his gaze. My stomach tightened instantly. Because the road signs we passed earlier were now different. Rustier. Older. Almost unreadable. Like time had moved differently here. Then I saw something that made my chest tighten further. A faded emergency sign near the ditch. Unit 14 response route, 1998 incident area. My throat went dry. "This wasn't here before," I whispered. The sheriff didn't respond. He just stepped out of the car. Rain hit his shoulders instantly. I followed. The wind felt colder now. Wrong somehow. We walked toward the sign. Mud sank under our boots with every step. Then I noticed tire marks. Old ones. Overlapping. Dozens of them. Leading off the road into the swamp. The sheriff crouched down. Touched the mud. His hand came up wet. But not just with water. Something darker mixed in. He stared at it for a long moment. Then quietly said, "These aren't fresh." I looked around. The swamp trees were closer now, almost forming a wall around the road. Then something crackled faintly in the distance. The sheriff froze. So did I. Because it wasn't the radio this time. It was something else. A voice. Not coming from a device, but from the swamp itself. Soft. Faint. Unit 14. I turned sharply. Nothing there. But the sound kept moving. Like it was circling us. The sheriff raised his flashlight slowly. The beam cut through fog. Then stopped. At something hanging between two trees. A broken radio antenna. Old. Rust-covered. Still swaying slightly. But it wasn't the antenna that made my stomach drop. It was what was attached to it. A speaker. Still working. Faint static spilling out into the night. Then the voice came again. Clearer this time. "Why did you leave us?" The sheriff took a step back. His breathing changed. I could hear it. He whispered. That wasn't broadcast. Another voice joined the first. Then another. All coming from the swamp now. Not the radio. From everywhere. The trees. The water. The ground beneath us. I felt my pulse spike. The sheriff raised his gun slightly, but didn't fire, because there was nothing to shoot. Only voices. Getting closer. Then suddenly, the radio in the sheriff's pocket turned itself on, even though we both knew it was off. Static exploded loudly. Then one final transmission came through. Not screaming. Not broken. Clear. Too clear. Unit 14 is still on scene. A long pause. Then, we never left. The swamp went completely silent after that. Even the wind stopped. And in that silence, we both heard something moving behind us. Slow. Wet. Like footsteps coming up from the flooded road we had just walked. And when I turned around, the tire marks in the mud were filling themselves back in, as if something was erasing where we had been. The last transmission came through at 3:17 a.m. And this time it wasn't broken. It was calm. Too calm. "Sheriff Collins, please respond." I froze instantly when I heard it, because that voice wasn't static anymore. It was clear. Right inside the cruiser radio. Sheriff Collins grabbed the mic so fast his knuckles turned white. "Unit 14, state your location." A pause. Long enough to feel wrong. Then the voice answered. "South bend of Highway 37, near the old flood line." My stomach tightened immediately. That place wasn't on any current map. The sheriff didn't hesitate. He threw the cruiser into gear. "We're going." I turned toward him. "You really think that's Mercer?" He didn't answer right away. Just stared at the road ahead. Then quietly said, "No, but Mercer is still part of it." That answer made no sense. But I didn't have time to think about it. Because the moment we crossed the next bend, the fog changed. It thickened fast. like something shut the world behind us. The road became narrower again, trees pressing in close on both sides. And then we saw it, a police cruiser half buried in swamp mud. My breath caught instantly. It wasn't just stuck, it was sinking, slowly, like the ground itself was swallowing it. Sheriff Collins stopped the vehicle. We both stepped out into knee-deep water. Cold, thick. It dragged at my boots immediately. The cruiser ahead was tilted sideways, front end almost completely gone under the swamp. Only the back half remained visible. The sheriff moved first. I followed closely behind. Every step made wet sucking sounds in the mud. The air felt heavier here, like breathing took effort. When we got closer, I saw the markings on the vehicle. Unit 14. My chest tightened. "This is impossible," I whispered. The sheriff didn't respond. He just walked toward the driver's door. It was hanging open slightly, swaying in the water. Then I noticed something inside. A flashlight still on, lying across the passenger seat, still glowing. That made no sense. After all this time, after everything, it should have died hours ago. Sheriff Collins leaned inside carefully. I stood behind him, scanning the swamp around us. Fog moved slowly between the trees. Too slow, almost deliberate. Then the sheriff pulled something from inside. A radio logbook. Soaked, barely readable. He flipped through pages quickly, then stopped. His face changed immediately. "What is it?" I asked. He didn't answer. He just handed it to me. My hands were shaking as I looked down. The pages were filled with handwritten notes, all from Mercer, but the last entry made my blood run cold. "We can still hear them under the water. They are learning our voices." I looked up at the sheriff. "What does that mean?" He didn't answer. Instead, he turned toward the swamp, like he was listening. That's when I heard it too. Soft splashing, somewhere deeper in the fog. Not close, but approaching. Slow. The sheriff raised his flashlight. "Mercer," he called out. No answer. Only the swamp breathing back at us. Then the radio inside the submerged cruiser crackled. I flinched instantly, even though it was underwater, even though it shouldn't have worked. A voice came through. "Weak. Sheriff." My skin went cold. The sheriff stepped closer to the cruiser. "Where are you?" A pause. Then, inside. I looked down. The cruiser was sinking deeper, waterline rising over the dashboard. Then something moved behind the glass. A shape, sitting in the driver's seat. But it wasn't clear, just distortion through dirty water. The sheriff leaned in further. Mercer opened the door. The radio inside hissed loudly. Then the voice came again. Not just Mercer this time. Multiple voices layered together, all speaking at once. "Don't let it finish our call." My heart pounded so hard it hurt. I stepped back instinctively. "What is it?" I whispered. The sheriff didn't hear me. He was focused on the cruiser. Then suddenly, the submerged headlights flickered on. Even underwater. Bright, dead white light cutting through the swamp. And for 1 second, I saw inside clearly. There were no seats, no steering wheel, just water, and something floating in it. Human-shaped, but not whole. The sheriff stumbled back instantly. "What the hell?" The radio screamed again, this time directly into the air around us. Not just the device, everywhere at once. It uses us to speak. The fog around us shifted, like it reacted, like it listened. I felt my breathing get shallow. The swamp felt alive now, not metaphorically, physically, alive. Then the cruiser sank suddenly, vast, like something pulled it down. Water surged upward as it disappeared. We both backed away quickly, but the moment it vanished, the swamp went silent again. Too silent. The sheriff stood frozen. I could see it in his face now. He was no longer following procedure. He was reacting to something he didn't understand. Then his radio beeped again. One single tone, like a new transmission. We both looked at it. Sheriff Collins slowly raised it. Sheriff Collins. The voice was different now. Not Mercer. Not dispatch. Something else. And it sounded closer. Behind us. The sheriff turned instantly. Flashlight sweeping the fog. At first, nothing. Then slowly, a second light appeared. Deep in the swamp. Faint. Moving. Then another. And another. At least 5 beams now. All cutting through the fog toward us. But they weren't normal flashlight beams. They were underwater. Coming from beneath the surface of the swamp. Moving upward. Rising. I felt my legs go weak. "They're under us," I whispered. The sheriff raised his weapon slowly. But he wasn't aiming at anything visible. Because there was nothing visible yet. Just lights. Getting closer. Then the radio in his hand spoke one last time. And this time, it didn't sound like one voice at all. It sounded like all of them. Mercer. Bellamy. Walter. Unknown deputies. All speaking together. Calm. Unified. We found the last road. The sheriff whispered, "What road?" The response came instantly. Back. The swamp beneath our feet shifted. A deep, low rumble rolled through the water. Like something enormous was turning over underneath. I stepped back slowly. Mud pulled at my boots harder than before. Like it didn't want to let go. Then I saw it. Something rising beneath the surface. A shape too large to understand. Moving slowly under the swamp floor. Not swimming. Not floating. Rising. The sheriff grabbed my arm. Run. We turned instantly and started moving through the water. But every step felt heavier. Like the swamp itself was holding us back. Behind us, the water began to glow faintly. Dozens of small lights now. Forming a path. A road. Right through the swamp. Straight toward us. The radio in my hand crackled once more. One final message. Not from the dead. Not from Mercer. From something using them. Complete transmission. The sheriff looked back for half a second. And that's when he saw it too. The cruiser wasn't gone. It had reappeared behind us. Half submerged again. Doors open. And inside it, someone was sitting in the driver's seat. Waving. Slowly. Like they wanted us to come back. The sheriff whispered something I'll never forget. They're repeating the call. And then the swamp behind us spoke again. But this time, it said my name. The first body I saw wasn't floating. It was standing, chest deep in floodwater, between 2 broken cypress trees, like it was waiting for something to finish loading. My radio hissed once in my ear. Then silence. I remember thinking that was the first wrong thing. Because after a hurricane, nothing is ever silent out here. Water keeps moving, trees keep cracking, Bugs never fully stop. But that morning, everything felt paused, like the swamp was holding its breath. I adjusted my patrol vest and pushed the boat forward with the pole. The reports came in at dawn. Bodies in the backwaters near Mile Creek. Multiple callers. Same story. Different words. Some said 3 bodies. Some said 5. One caller just whispered, "They're still moving." That last one stayed in my head longer than it should have. I rounded the bend near the flooded cypress line. That's when I saw the first shape. I slowed the boat instantly. My stomach tightened before my brain even caught up. A man stood in the water. Not drowning. Not struggling. Just standing there. Head slightly tilted like he was listening to something under the surface. I raised my binoculars slowly. Uniform shirt. Torn at the shoulder. No movement. No ripple around him either. That was the second wrong thing. Water always reacts, even to small things. But around him, it was almost still. Like he wasn't disturbing it. Like he wasn't fully there. My radio crackled again. A weak burst of static. Then my partner's voice from dispatch. Unit 7, confirmed visual. I looked back toward shore. Nothing behind me but fog and broken trees. "Copy," I said slowly. Then I looked back. The man was gone. Just gone. No splash, no movement, no wake. I felt my throat tighten. I scanned the water fast. Left, right, under the trees. Nothing. Then I saw it. Ripples. Moving toward me. Slow. Too slow. Like something walking just under the surface. I pushed the boat back instinctively. "Dispatch, I have movement in the water." My sentence stopped halfway. Because something bumped the boat. Soft. From below. Not hard enough to tip it. Just enough to remind me I was not alone. I looked down. Dark water. No reflection. No shape. Just depth. Then a hand rose. Right beside the boat. Slow. Fingers first. Then palm. Then wrist. It wasn't grabbing me. It was just rising. Like it had been waiting for permission to exist. I froze. Every part of me said move. But I didn't. Because I saw the skin. It wasn't swollen like a drowned body should be. It looked preserved. Too intact. Too recent. The hand stopped at the edge of the boat. Not touching it. Just hovering there. Then it slowly sank back down. Like it changed its mind. My breathing got loud in my ears. I backed the boat away fast. Water slapped against the sides as I pushed through reeds. My radio cracked again. This time clearer. "Unit 7, do you copy?" I swallowed hard. "Yeah, I copy." A pause. Then dispatch again. "We're getting multiple reports. One more just came in, same location." I looked around. Empty swamp. Still water. No wind. "No bodies here," I said. Even as I said it, I knew I was lying. Because I had seen something. Even if it wasn't fully a body. The radio went silent. I moved deeper into Mile Creek. Floodwater covered everything now. Road markers barely visible. Fence lines broken and floating. That's when I saw the second shape. Lying half submerged against a fallen log. Face down. Still. I approached slowly. Each push of the pole felt louder than it should have. When I got close enough, I stopped again. Something about it didn't feel right. Not the body itself. The position. Too perfect. like it was placed there. I leaned closer. Uniform badge half visible under the water. Same department. My department. My chest tightened. I reached out slowly with a pole to turn it. The moment it moved, the eyes opened. Underwater. Wide. Staring straight at me. I fell back instantly, almost losing balance in the boat. The body didn't move. Didn't rise. Didn't speak. Just looked. Alive in the worst way possible. My radio screamed static. Then a voice broke through it. Not dispatch. Not my partner. Something older sounding. Do not retrieve. I froze. Who is this? I said. No answer. The body in the water blinked. Slow. Deliberate. I stepped back further in the boat. Dispatch, I need confirmation. The radio cut me off. Leave them where they are. The voice sounded closer now. Like it wasn't coming from the radio anymore, but from the swamp itself. I looked around fast. Nothing. Only water. Only fog. Then the body sank. Not fell. Not drifted. Sank. Straight down like something pulled it. No bubbles. No struggle. Gone in seconds. I stood there shaking slightly. That's when I noticed the third shape. Not in front of me. Behind me. Reflected in the water beside the boat. Standing. Chest deep again. Same position as before. But closer. Much closer. I turned slowly. My boat was empty. No one there. I looked back down. The reflection was still there, watching me. Then it tilted its head, just slightly, like it recognized me. My radio went completely silent after that. No static, no voice, just dead air. I should have left. That's what training says. That's what instinct says. But I didn't, because something about it felt unfinished. Like the swamp wasn't done showing me what it wanted me to see. I moved the boat forward again. Slow now. Careful. The fog thickened as I went deeper. Trees leaned in closer. Water got darker. Then I saw them. More shapes. Not one. Not two. At least 5. Standing in different places across the flooded marsh. All facing the same direction. All still. All waiting. I stopped the boat completely. My hands felt cold on the pole. I lifted binoculars again. One of them moved. Just slightly. Not walking. Not swimming. Just turning its head toward me. Then another followed. Then another. One by one. All of them started looking. At me. I lowered the binoculars slowly. My chest felt tight. Because I realized something I didn't want to understand. They weren't floating bodies. They weren't victims. They were watching posts. Placed in the water like markers. Like something was mapping the swamp through them. My radio suddenly came back to life. One final transmission. Clear. No static. Just my own call sign. Unit 7. I answered without thinking. Go ahead. A long pause. Then, you are inside the survey zone. I felt my stomach drop. Who is this? I whispered. No answer. Then the water around my boat rippled. Not from wind. From underneath. Something large moved just below the surface. Slow. Circling. The standing figures in the swamp all turned toward the same point behind me. Not at me anymore. Past me. I didn't turn right away. I couldn't, because I realized the worst part. They hadn't been watching me. They had been watching what was behind me the entire time. And something in the water finally started moving toward the boat. The first thing I noticed about the house was that it shouldn't be standing. Not like that. Not above everything. The swamp had swallowed half the road. The trees were underwater. Even the old fence lines were gone. But this one house sat on tall wooden stilts like it had been waiting for the flood on purpose. Perfectly still. No lights at first. Just a dark shape above the waterline. I killed the engine of the boat and let it drift closer. The water here felt different. Thicker. Like it didn't want me moving through it. My radio crackled once, then died again. Ever since Highway 37, the signal had been coming and going like something was testing it. I looked up at the house again. Then I saw movement on the porch. Someone standing there, watching me. I raised my flashlight slowly. A man, middle-aged, wet shirt clinging to his body, even though it wasn't raining at that moment. He didn't wave, didn't call out, just stared like he already knew I would come. "Sheriff's office," I called out. My voice felt small in the open swamp. No answer. The man finally turned slightly and went inside. Like I wasn't important enough to respond to. That should have been my first warning. I tied the boat to one of the wooden stilts and stepped into shallow water beneath the house. It came up to my knees. Cold. Too cold for this time of year. The wood creaked above me as I climbed the steps. Every sound echoed weirdly in the swamp air, like it was being repeated somewhere far away. I reached the porch, stopped for half a second. Something about the door felt wrong. Not broken, not damaged, just recently used, like it had been opened and closed too many times today. I knocked once, then again. After a long pause, the door opened slightly. The man stood there again, closer this time. I could see his face now. Tired eyes, sunken cheeks, but no fear. That was the strange part. People out here were supposed to be scared of the flood, of the swamp, of everything going wrong. But he looked calm. Too calm. "We got reports of strange activity in this area," I said. He blinked slowly. "No activity," he replied. His voice was flat, like he had said the same sentence many times before. Behind him, I saw movement inside the house. A shadow passing across the back wall. Then another. I leaned slightly to see better. "How many people are inside?" I asked. He didn't answer immediately. That delay made my chest tighten. Then finally, "Just us." Something about the way he said "us" made my skin feel cold. I stepped inside anyway. The floorboards creaked under my boots. The air smelled like wet wood and old oil lamps. No electricity. Only dim lantern light hanging from hooks. The house was bigger than it looked from outside. That was my second strange realization. Rooms extending deeper than the structure should allow. That didn't make sense on stilts. I moved forward slowly. My flashlight beam caught framed photos on the wall. Family pictures. Smiling faces. But every photo had something off. The same people. Same positions. Different years. But their expressions never changed. Not even slightly. Like time didn't affect them. Then I heard a soft sound from the kitchen. Metal scraping against wood. I turned toward it. A woman stood there. Older. Holding a spoon over a pot. Cooking. Slowly. As if nothing outside the house mattered. She didn't look at me, just stirred the pot. "Ma'am," I said carefully, "you need to evacuate. This area is unsafe." She finally looked up. Her eyes met mine, and I immediately regretted it. Not because she looked angry, not because she looked scared, but because her eyes looked practiced, like she had made this exact expression many times before. "We're fine," she said. Her voice was soft, too rehearsed. Behind her, the pot bubbled slightly, but there was no heat source under it. No fire, no stove, just boiling water sitting still. I stepped closer. "What are you cooking?" She paused, then smiled slightly. "Dinner." I looked into the pot. My stomach tightened. There was nothing inside, just water, clear, but it was boiling anyway. That shouldn't happen. I turned back toward the hallway. The man from the porch was standing there again. I hadn't heard him move. He pointed deeper into the house. "Back room," he said. That was all. No explanation. No emotion. I followed, because I needed answers more than I needed caution at that point. The hallway felt longer now. Longer than it should have been. The walls seemed to stretch as I walked, like the house was adjusting itself around me. I stopped at a closed door. Something behind it made a soft tapping sound. 3 taps, then silence, then 3 more. I reached for the handle, but before I could open it, the woman's voice came from behind me. "Don't open that one." I turned slowly. "Why?" She hesitated, like she had to remember the answer. "Because it opens at night." My chest tightened. That doesn't make sense. The man appeared again beside her, silent, watching me. He added quietly, "It only opens when they come up." "Who comes up?" I asked. Neither of them answered. Instead, the tapping from behind the door stopped completely. Then something new started. Water dripping. Slow. Inside the house. That made no sense at all, because the floor beneath us was raised high above the swamp. There should be no water inside. I looked down the hallway. The wood near the back room looked darker now, like it was wetting from underneath. The man stepped closer to me. For the first time, I saw something in his face. Not fear, not calm. Fatigue. Deep, heavy exhaustion. Like he hadn't slept in a very long time. "They come every night," he said. I frowned. "Who does?" He didn't answer directly. Instead, he said, "That's why we stay above the line." The water outside the house suddenly rippled. Hard, like something large moved underneath the swamp directly below us. All 3 of us paused at the same time. The woman tightened her grip on the spoon. The man's eyes shifted toward the floor. I moved toward the window slowly. Outside, the swamp was darker than before. The surface wasn't still anymore. It was circling, like something was turning underneath. Then I saw it. Shapes, not fully visible, but there, moving under the waterline. Slow, too slow, like they were walking. The woman whispered behind me, "They're early tonight." I turned sharply. Early for what? No answer. The tapping started again, behind the locked door. But now it wasn't just tapping. It was knocking. Louder. Faster. Like something was trying to remember how to get inside. The man suddenly grabbed my arm. His grip was tight. Too tight. "Don't let them finish the pattern," he said. I pulled back slightly. "What pattern?" He looked at me like I should already know. But I didn't. Then the lights inside the house flickered once, even though there were no electrical lights, only lanterns, and every lantern flame bent at the same time, toward the door, like something outside was pulling them. The knocking stopped. Complete silence followed. That silence felt worse, because now I didn't know if it was gone or waiting. Then the woman spoke again, very softly. "They heard you come inside." My pulse spiked instantly. Who heard me? The man didn't answer. Instead, he walked toward the back door slowly. The one that should have been locked. The one that shouldn't open at night. He stopped in front of it. And for the first time, I saw him hesitate. Just for a second. Then he said something I didn't understand at first. "They don't come for us anymore." I frowned. "What do you mean anymore?" He looked at me and said quietly, "They come for whoever answers the water." Before I could respond, the wood beneath the house groaned loudly. Deeper, like something massive shifted directly under us. The water outside rose slightly against the stilts. Not flooding, not spilling, just pressing upward, as if the swamp had finally decided to stand up. The first sound came from above my head. A slow creak, not the kind wood makes when it settles. This was different, like something walking carefully, trying not to be heard. I stopped breathing for a second. The woman in the kitchen didn't react. The man near the hallway didn't move either. But I saw it in their faces. They heard it too, just not for the first time. The house groaned again, this time louder, right above the ceiling, above the attic. I tilted my head slowly. The sound was clear now. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, walking across old wood, then stopping, then starting again, like something was packing. My hand went instinctively to my radio. Dead. Still no signal. Of course. Nothing works right in this place anymore. The man finally spoke without looking at me. It started after the second flood. I frowned. "You mean someone is up there?" The woman answered instead. "No one goes up there." Her voice was flat, like she was repeating a rule, not explaining a situation. The footsteps above shifted again, this time closer to the center of the ceiling. Then they stopped directly over us. Silence, heavy silence, the kind that presses into your ears. I stepped back slightly. "Then who is it?" I asked. No answer, only the faint sound of water moving under the house. Slow, constant, alive. The man walked past me toward the stairs leading up. My stomach tightened instantly. "Wait," I said. He didn't stop. Each step on the wooden stairs echoed too loudly, like the house was amplifying it. The woman whispered behind me, "Don't go up there when it's awake." That word hit me wrong. Awake, like the house itself had states, like it slept, like it watched. The man stopped at the top of the stairs. The attic door was above him, half cracked open, darkness leaking through the gap. Then the footsteps above started again, right above that door. Slow, right, left, right, like something turning in place now. The man raised his hand toward the door, hesitated, then stopped. For the first time, I saw fear in him. Real fear. Not panic. Not shock. Memory. Like he had seen this before. Many times. The woman suddenly spoke again. "They don't stay in the water anymore." I looked at her. "What does that mean?" She didn't answer. Instead, she stared at the ceiling, like she was counting the steps. The footsteps stopped again. Then came a new sound. Scratching. Slow. Dragging across wood. Not random. Intentional. Like something was writing on the attic floor. The man finally turned back to me. His voice was lower now. We didn't build this house for living. That made my chest tighten. What do you mean? He swallowed. We built it so they couldn't reach the water line. The woman finished softly. But they learned how to climb. A cold feeling spread through my body. The scratching above grew louder. Then stopped. Complete silence again. Too complete. That kind of silence always means something is listening. The man reached the attic door. Slowly pushed it open. It creaked. Long. Painful. The air from inside shifted instantly. Cold. Damp. Wrong. He stepped up one step. Then another. I followed without thinking. Something in me said don't. Something louder said you already saw too much to stop now. We reached the attic entrance. The space above was dark. My flashlight cut into it slowly. Dust floated in the beam. Thick. Old. Undisturbed. But not fully. Because there were footprints. Fresh ones. Bare. Walking across the attic floor. Not random. Not chaotic. They formed a circle. Around something in the center. I felt my throat tighten. The man didn't move. He just stared at them. Like he was confirming a fear he already had. I stepped into the attic carefully. Each step sinking slightly into dust. Then I saw it. The footprints didn't just walk. They repeated. Same path. Again and again. Like someone had been walking in circles for hours. Maybe days. But the dust was still soft. Still recent. Impossible. I crouched slightly. My flashlight followed the prints. They led toward a corner, where the roof slanted low. Something was pressed against the wood there. A shape. Small. Sitting. I moved closer. The woman's voice came from behind me. Don't shine light there. Too late. My flashlight hit it. A chair. Old wooden chair. Facing the corner. And on it, a wet jacket. Still dripping. My stomach dropped. That jacket looked familiar. Because I had seen it before. Downstairs. On the man. But now it was here. Empty. Like it had been taken off seconds ago. The footprints suddenly stopped. Right in front of the chair. All of them. At once, the dust in the attic shifted slightly. Like something just exhaled. I stepped back instinctively. What is this? I whispered. The man finally spoke behind me. His voice cracked slightly. That's where it learns. A chill ran through my spine. Learns what? He didn't answer. Instead, the attic creaked again. But not from above this time. From inside the walls. Slow movement. Left side. Then right. Something inside the structure itself. The woman backed away slightly. Her hand trembling now. They come through repetition, she said quietly. I turned sharply. Explain that. She shook her head. They copy what they see long enough, until it becomes real. The scratching started again. But now it was lower. Inside the floor. Not above. Not around. Under us. The man suddenly moved toward the chair. I grabbed his arm. Don't. He stopped. For a second. then whispered, "It's already wearing us." That sentence didn't make sense until the jacket on the chair moved slightly. Not falling, not shifting, breathing. The fabric rose and fell once. Slow, like something inside it was remembering how to breathe. I stepped back immediately. My flashlight flickered. Once, twice, the attic seemed to darken around the edges, like the light was being pulled inward. The footprints started again, but not on the floor now. On the walls, fresh prints appearing vertically, walking upward, toward the ceiling beams. My breathing got heavier. The woman grabbed my sleeve. "We need to go down," she said urgently. But the man didn't move. He was staring at the chair, like he was waiting for something to finish. Then the jacket stood up. Not fell, not slipped. It stood, empty shape holding itself upright, like a person was inside it again. But there was nothing inside. No body, no face, just shape. Then it turned toward us. Slowly. My flashlight died for half a second. Total darkness. In that darkness, I heard footsteps. All around us. Not one set. Many. Walking inside the attic. On the walls. On the ceiling. On the floor. The woman whispered, "It's completing the pattern." The light came back. The jacket was gone. But the footprints were everywhere now. All directions. All moving at once. Then the attic door below slammed shut. Hard. We all froze. The man whispered. "It locked it." I felt my stomach drop. What locked it? He looked at me, and for the first time said the truth without hesitation. The house doesn't let it leave until it finishes learning everything we do. The walls creaked again. Closer. The attic felt smaller now, like it was shrinking around us. Then, from inside the darkness of the beams above, a voice repeated exactly what I had said earlier. "Ab Cuyahoga." My blood went cold instantly, because it didn't just mimic the words. It copied my tone, my fear, perfectly. The woman stepped back trembling. "It heard you." The man closed his eyes, like he already knew what came next. The attic floor creaked again, slow footsteps forming right behind me now. But when I turned, there was nothing there. Only fresh footprints, walking away from me, down the stairs, back into the house, like something had just learned how to leave the attic and was now going somewhere else. And the worst part was, it was learning faster than we could escape it. The water came back faster than it should have. That was the first thing that felt wrong. One moment the swamp was low, exposed roots and cracked mud everywhere. Next moment it was rising again, quietly, like it had been waiting for us to stop watching. I stood at the edge of the flooded trail, boots sinking slightly into wet ground, staring at the dark water crawling back into places it had already swallowed weeks ago. My radio crackled once. No signal followed, just noise, like something breathing through metal. Behind me, one of the older deputies muttered, "This ain't normal runoff." I didn't answer, because I was already looking at something floating near the reeds. At first, I thought it was debris. A log, maybe a broken dock plank. But then it turned slightly, and I saw the shape of an arm, drifting, not moving with the current, moving against it. That was the first moment my chest tightened. We got the boat in the water fast. Too fast. Nobody wanted to talk much. Even the engine sounded quieter than usual, like it didn't want to disturb what was under the surface. As we moved deeper into the flooded path, the trees grew closer together. The water got darker, thicker, like it was remembering things. Then I saw the same spot again, the same clearing where we had recovered the body last week, the one that had already been tagged, already reported, already bagged. But the swamp was not empty there now. Something was rising out of it. Slow, too slow. At first I thought it was another body, but then I saw it lift its head. My breath stopped, because it was the same face. The same man we had pulled out and sent to the coroner. Same torn shirt, same swollen skin. But it was standing now, chest deep in water, watching us. One of the deputies whispered behind me, "That's impossible." I didn't move. Neither did it. The water around its body wasn't flowing right. It was still, like the current refused to touch it. Then it took one step forward. Slow, heavy, but it wasn't walking like a living man. It was dragging the swamp with it, like the water belonged to it. My hand went instinctively to my weapon, but I didn't raise it. Something in me knew. This wasn't a fight you shoot your way out of. The man in the water tilted his head, and I heard something I shouldn't have. My own voice, coming from the radio on my shoulder. Except I hadn't spoken. It said softly, "You already saw me once." My throat went dry instantly. The deputy beside me froze. "Did your radio just?" I shut it off. Vast, but the sound didn't stop. It wasn't coming from the radio anymore. It was coming from the water, from the body itself. The dead man took another step, then another. Each step created ripples that moved backward instead of forward, like the swamp was rewinding around him. Behind us, the boat engine coughed, then died. Silence dropped over everything. Heavy, smothering. No birds, no insects, not even wind. Just water and breathing. Not ours. His. The deputy behind me whispered, "We need to back out now." I agreed. But when I turned the boat, the channel we came through was gone. Not blocked. Gone. The water had shifted, rewritten itself. We were surrounded by marsh that hadn't been there before. I felt my stomach tighten. This wasn't geography anymore. It was something else. Something that changed when you weren't looking. The corpse in the water stopped moving. Just stood there, watching. Then it spoke again. But this time it wasn't my voice. It was the radio dispatcher's voice. Calm, flat, like nothing was wrong. "Unit 14, do you copy?" The deputy grabbed the radio instantly. "This is Unit 14. We're requesting immediate extraction. We've gotta..." The voice cut him off. "No extraction logged." My blood ran cold. He tried again. Louder. "This is active emergency. We have a confirmed reanimated." Static burst through the speaker. Then the same voice returned. Softer now. Closer. "No emergency exists for Highway 37. I looked at the dead man in the water and realized something terrible. He wasn't just repeating voices. He was correcting them, like reality itself was wrong. And he was fixing it. The water around his legs began to rise. Not like flooding, like obedience. The swamp was responding to him. The deputy beside me started shaking his head. "This is not real. This is not real." but I had seen enough bodies in my life to know when something was real. And this was worse than real. The man lifted his hand slowly, pointed at us, and the water beneath our boat responded instantly. It pulled hard. The boat shifted sideways, like something had grabbed it from underneath. One of the deputies fell into the water. He didn't scream. Not at first, because the water didn't let him. It went straight for his mouth, like it was silencing him before he could decide to be afraid. I grabbed his arm and pulled, but the water pulled back harder, like a living thing refusing to let go of its claim. Then I saw it, beneath the surface. Shapes, not one, many, lined up under the swamp like something waiting in formation. All facing upward, all looking at us through the water. The dead man took another step. Now he was close enough that I could see details I wished I hadn't. His skin wasn't rotting. It was smoothing, fixing itself, like the swamp was repairing him instead of decaying him. His mouth opened slightly, and every ripple in the water stopped. Instantly, he spoke again, but this time it wasn't a voice I recognized. It sounded like dozens of voices layered together. Calm, patient, final. You were not supposed to recover me. The words hit my chest like weight. Behind me, the trapped deputy finally broke. What is it talking about? I didn't answer, because I finally understood something I didn't want to. We didn't find the body. The body let us find it. The water around us began to rise again. Higher this time. Not flooding the boat, just surrounding it, like a circle closing. The dead man stepped closer, and the surface of the swamp beneath him turned glass still, like it was becoming a mirror. Then I saw something inside it. A reflection. Not mine. Not his. Something beneath both of us. Looking up. Waiting. The radio on my shoulder clicked one last time, and the dispatcher's voice returned, almost gentle now. Highway 37 is closed. A pause. Then, because it was never open, the swamp rose suddenly. Not violently. Not fast. Just inevitable. Like something finishing a sentence it started a long time ago. The last thing I saw before the water reached the boat was the dead man standing perfectly still. Watching. Not angry. Not alive. Just certain. And behind him, something else began to rise. Something that had been waiting underneath him the entire time. The first thing I saw was her feet. Barefoot. Covered in swamp mud that looked too dark to be just dirt. She was walking right in the middle of Highway 37 like the road belonged to her, and the night didn't matter. No flashlight. No car. No sound except my patrol tires slowing down on their own. I remember thinking, this is how accidents start out here. One wrong stop, one wrong person, one bad night. I rolled my window down halfway. "Ma'am," I called out. My voice felt too loud in the silence. She didn't react, didn't even turn her head, just kept walking forward. Slow, steady, like she already knew where she was going. My hand stayed on the wheel for a moment longer than it should have. Something about her felt off. Not just lost, not just confused. Wrong. I stepped out of the vehicle slowly, keeping my flashlight low. The beam hit her back first. Her dress was torn, wet, sticking to her skin like it had been dragged through water instead of rain. But there hadn't been rain tonight. Not for days. That was the first thought that didn't sit right. "Ma'am," I said again, closer now, "you need help." She stopped. Just like that. No hesitation. No turning. She stopped as if the word help had physically reached her and held her in place. For a second, I thought she might finally look at me. But she didn't. Instead, she whispered something. So low I almost didn't catch it. "Still walking." I frowned. "Ma'am, are you lost?" She slowly turned her head. Only her head, not her body. And when I saw her face, something inside me tightened. Her eyes weren't looking at me. They were looking slightly past me. Like I was already behind her in her mind. Like I wasn't the important thing in the scene. Her lips moved again. "You didn't stop it." My throat went dry. "Stop what?" She blinked once. Slow. Heavy. Then said, "The water remembers." A cold feeling crawled up my spine. I've dealt with drunks, runaways, trauma cases, storms, drownings. But people don't talk like that. Not in real life. Not in a way that feels rehearsed by something else. Behind her, the swamp trees stood completely still. No wind. No insects. No movement. Like the whole world had paused to listen. I took one step closer. "Listen, I'm going to call for backup. We'll get you." She shook her head once. Vast. Sharp. Like the idea of backup was offensive. Then she pointed behind me. Not at the road. Not at my car. At the swamp. I turned slightly without meaning to. Just enough to see it. The water beyond the shoulder of Highway 37. Dark. Still. Too still. Then I saw something rise just under the surface. A shape. Not breaking the water. Just moving inside it. Like it was remembering how to exist. When I turned back, she was closer. I hadn't heard her move. Not one sound. Now she was only a few feet away. And I noticed something worse. Her feet weren't just muddy. They were wrinkled. Pruned. Like they had been in water too long. Too long for a living person standing on a dry road. "You're not from here," I said quietly. She smiled slightly. But it wasn't a real smile. It was more like muscle memory. "I was," she said. Then she paused. Like she was correcting herself. Before it came back. I felt my grip tighten on my flashlight. Before what came back. That's when she finally looked straight at me. Really looked. And her eyes didn't feel like eyes anymore. They felt like depth. Like standing too close to a hole that has no bottom. "The thing you keep pulling out," she said softly. My stomach dropped a little. "We don't." But she interrupted me. "You always pull it out." Her voice got quieter. "Then it always finds its way back." A sudden breeze passed through the road. Cold. Wrong direction. The swamp water behind her rippled once. Only once. Like something answered her. I took another step back without realizing it. "What are you talking about?" I asked. But even as I said it, I remembered the reports. Bodies found in places they shouldn't be. Recovered. Logged. Then found again. Different location. Same face. Same wounds. Same silence. The woman tilted her head. "You think the swamp takes," she said. Then she stepped closer again. Slow. Unblinking. "It returns." My radio cracked once in my vest. Static. Then a faint voice underneath it. Too faint to understand. But it sounded like my name. I froze. The woman noticed immediately. She smiled again. This time wider. "You heard it," she said. My hand went to the radio. "What did you do?" She shook her head. "I didn't do anything." Then she leaned slightly closer and whispered something that made my skin go cold. "It heard you first." The radio crackled again, this time louder, a full sentence trying to push through static. But it wasn't clear, just broken sound, like someone speaking underwater. I stepped back toward my vehicle. "Stay where you are," I said, trying to regain control. My voice didn't sound like mine anymore. She didn't move, didn't chase, just stood there watching me like she already knew I wasn't leaving. That's when the road behind her changed. Not visually at first, but emotionally. Like my brain noticed something was missing before my eyes did. The road markings faded slightly. The edges of the asphalt looked softer, darker, almost wet. But the strangest part, the water in the swamp started moving toward the road. Not flowing, crawling. The woman spoke again. "You saw the first return." My hand froze on the car door. "The what?" She nodded toward the swamp. "The one you pulled out." My memory flashed without permission. The body we recovered last week. Male, unidentified, half submerged, eyes open, not breathing, officially dead. I swallowed hard. "We processed it," I said. She nodded slowly. "That's what you call it." The water behind her rose slightly, just enough to touch the edge of the road, then stopped, like it was waiting for permission. My radio screamed suddenly with static. Then a voice broke through. Dispatch tone, but wrong, too calm. Unit responding to Highway 37, confirmed visual. I grabbed the mic. "This is Sheriff Unit. I have a civilian on the road, possible mental distress. I need immediate backup." Silence. Then the dispatcher replied. "No civilian recorded on Highway 37. I looked up at the woman again. She was still smiling, softly now, like she already knew how this ended. "That's not possible," I said into the radio. The dispatcher responded immediately. "Highway 37 is inactive." A pause. Then, "No current reports exist for that location." My breath got shallow. I looked down the road. The patrol lights reflected off something that wasn't there before. A thin layer of water covering the asphalt, slowly rising. The woman took one last step forward. Now she was close enough that I could see the mud wasn't just on her skin. It was under her skin, like it had grown into her. She spoke one final time. Soft, almost kind. "You should have let it stay down." Behind her, the swamp water finally crossed the road line. And the moment it touched the asphalt, the world felt like it tilted slightly, like something deep underneath had just opened its eyes. The water behind me didn't splash. It slid, like something careful trying not to wake the road. I didn't move at first. Couldn't, because the moment that water crossed Highway 37, the air itself felt different. Heavier, like the world had just agreed to. The water didn't stop at the road. It kept going, like it had been waiting a long time to finally be allowed forward. I stood there on Highway 37, watching it spread across the asphalt in thin, quiet layers. No sound, no rush, just arrival. My radio hissed once again, then died completely. Not even static now, just dead silence. Behind me, the woman was gone. One moment she was there, standing in the rising water. The next moment, empty road. No footsteps, no splash, no sign she had ever existed at all. That should have made me feel relieved. It didn't, because things don't just disappear like that. Not in places like this. I looked down the road. The swamp on both sides had changed shape again. The trees leaned inward slightly, like they were watching me decide what to do next. And I knew, deep down, I had a choice I wasn't supposed to avoid anymore. Follow the water, or let it follow me. I started the engine. It coughed once, then came alive. Barely. The headlights cut through the fog like weak fingers. And I drove forward. Not fast, not slow, just forward, because stopping felt worse than moving. The road curved deeper into the swamp than I remembered. That was the first wrong detail. Highway 37 was supposed to end near the old drainage bridge. But the bridge never appeared. Only more road, and more water creeping in from the sides. Then I saw it. A shape on the right shoulder. A wooden sign. Half rotted. Barely standing. I slowed down. The letters were faded, but still readable. St. Hollow Church, 2 miles. I frowned immediately. I had never seen this sign before. Not in reports. Not in maps. Not in anything official. And yet it looked old. Like it had always been here. Waiting. My stomach tightened a little. Because places like that don't appear out of nowhere. They're either forgotten or hidden on purpose. I kept driving. The fog thickened. The swamp grew quieter. Even the insects stopped. That was when I noticed something else. The water on the road wasn't just following me anymore. It was guiding me. Each curve of the highway seemed slightly raised in the center. Like the road itself was directing me forward. Towards something I hadn't agreed to see. Then I saw the church. It didn't look like a building at first. It looked like something growing out of the swamp. Tall wooden structure. Broken steeple leaning slightly to one side. No lights. No movement. Just stillness. But the strangest part, it wasn't surrounded by water. It sat above it, like the swamp had stopped exactly at its edges. Respecting it, or avoiding it. I parked the vehicle without thinking too long, because something about it felt like if I stayed inside the car too long, it would notice I was hesitating. I stepped out. The air here felt different. Drier, but colder, like the church had stolen heat from the swamp and kept it for itself. My boots hit the wooden walkway leading to the entrance. Each step creaked louder than it should have. The sound traveled too far, too clean, like the building was listening. I stopped halfway. The doors were open, not broken, not forced, just open, waiting. Inside was darkness. Not normal darkness. Thick darkness. The kind that doesn't reflect light properly. I raised my flashlight. It cut through the first few rows of benches. Old pews, covered in dust. And something else. Scratch marks. Long, deep, like something had dragged itself through every row at once. My throat tightened, because scratch marks don't stay sharp for decades, unless something keeps making them. I stepped inside. The air changed instantly. Heavier, like the swamp had followed me in. The door behind me creaked shut. I turned fast. It hadn't slammed. It had just closed. Slow, careful, like a hand finishing a gesture. I tried the handle. Locked. Of course it was. My flashlight flicked across the altar. Empty. No cross. No candles, no Bible, just a raised platform stained darker than the rest of the wood, like something had been placed there for a long time. Something heavy, something that bled into the structure itself. Then I heard it, a sound from the far end of the church. Soft, like paper turning. I froze. My light shifted slowly toward the back rows. Nothing moved at first. Then I saw it. A figure sitting in the last pew, head slightly lowered. Still, too still. I took a step forward. "Hello," I called out. My voice echoed too much. Too clean. The figure didn't respond. I moved closer. Each step felt louder than the last. When I was halfway down the aisle, I realized something. There were more figures. Not just one. Rows of them. Sitting. Every pew filled. All facing forward. All completely motionless. But I hadn't seen them when I first walked in. I was sure of that. My flashlight moved across them slowly. Men. Women. Different ages. All wearing old swamp-wet clothing. But none of them looked fresh. None of them looked alive. Then one of them moved. Just slightly. A head tilting. Slow. Like it was remembering how to do it. My breath stopped. Another head turned. Then another. Not all at once. Not coordinated. More like delayed reaction. Like something had pressed play on a memory that wasn't ready. A whisper filled the room. Not from one person. From all of them. But out of sync. Fragments. Pieces of sentences that didn't align. Came through the water. Never left the pews. No pastor anymore. I stepped back instinctively. My boot hit something on the floor. I looked down. A pile of old notebooks. Church records. I picked one up quickly. The pages were soaked at the edges, but still readable. Names written over and over again. Same handwriting. Same ink. Different dates. But the dates didn't move forward. They repeated, like time had looped inside the building. Then I saw the last entry. My hand went cold reading it. Service concluded, no departure recorded. I looked up immediately. The figures were closer now. They hadn't walked. They had just been nearer. Like distance no longer applied correctly. I backed toward the door. Locked. Still locked. The whispering grew louder. Now I could hear individual voices. Not random anymore. Recognizable. Some of them sounded like they were praying. Some sounded like they were calling names. Then one voice cut through everything. Clear. Close. Behind me. Sheriff. I turned fast. A man stood near the aisle. Not sitting. Standing. I hadn't seen him there before. He wore a soaked black coat that looked like old pastor robes. But torn. Burned at the edges. His face was pale. Not dead. Not alive. Somewhere in between. "Don't stay in the middle," he said softly. My grip tightened on my flashlight. "Who are you?" He didn't answer directly. Instead, he looked around the church. At the seated figures. "They still think there's a service," he said. A chill ran through me. "What happened here?" The man hesitated. Like the answer hurt to say. Then he spoke. "The water came in first." A pause. Then the people followed it inside. I frowned. "That doesn't make sense." He gave a tired smile. "It stopped needing to make sense a long time ago." The figures in the pews shifted again. More heads turning toward me now. All at once, slow, like a tide deciding direction. The man stepped closer. "You followed the woman," he said. My stomach tightened. "Yes." He nodded. "She's not the one leading you." That made something cold drop in my chest. "What are you talking about?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked toward the altar. "The church doesn't have a pastor anymore," he said quietly. Then added, "It started appointing one." The whispering stopped. Instantly, silence returned. Worse than before, because silence meant listening. And I realized every single figure in the pews was now facing me completely. All at once, perfect alignment. The man stepped back slowly. "Don't speak inside," he warned. "Why?" I asked. His eyes flicked to the walls. "Because it records." That word hit wrong. Before I could ask anything else, the church lights flickered. But there were no lights, only darkness. And in that darkness, something spoke from every direction at once. Not voices, not whispers. A single sentence formed from all of them together. "Service will resume." The wooden floor beneath my feet groaned, like something beneath the church had just opened its mouth. I stood at the edge of the church floor, staring at the spot where the wood had given way. My flashlight beam shook a little in my hand, even though I told myself to stop that. A man in my position isn't supposed to shake. But down there, I heard it again. A voice, soft, wet, like it was speaking through water. "Sheriff." I froze. The swamp air inside that church felt heavier than outside, like the building was holding its breath with me. I took a step closer to the broken floorboards. The wood wasn't just rotten, it looked eaten, like something had been growing under it for years, slowly pushing up, waiting. My radio cracked again on my shoulder. Nothing useful, just static, then a faint tone like someone tapping on the mic from the other side. 3 taps paused, 2 taps. I didn't answer. I shouldn't have been hearing patterns in noise. But I was. I crouched down and angled my light into the hole. At first I thought it was just flooded basement water, swamp runoff, normal for a place like this. But it wasn't still. It moved like it was breathing. Slow rise, slow fall. And something floated just under the surface. Not debris. A page. A soaked paper, drifting in circles like it didn't know where to stop. I reached down before I could think better of it. My fingers brushed the water. Cold shot up my arm instantly. Not normal cold, not swamp cold. This felt like touching something that had never seen the sun. The water reacted. It pulled slightly. Not a wave. A pull. Like it noticed me. I jerked my hand back and stood up too fast, heart banging hard in my chest. "Get it together," I whispered to myself. My voice sounded wrong in that empty church, too loud, like it didn't belong there. That's when I heard footsteps above me. Not mine. Slow, careful, walking across old wood near the entrance. I turned my flashlight instantly. Nothing. Just the broken pews and the hanging dust moving like thin smoke. But the footsteps didn't stop. They changed direction. Toward the altar. I aimed the light there. Empty again. Yet the sound continued, circling me now, like someone packing around the edges of the room, studying me. My grip tightened on my flashlight. Then my radio came alive again. But this time it wasn't static. It was breathing. A slow, wet inhale, followed by a voice I recognized. My own. "Don't go down there." I went still. That wasn't possible. I pressed the radio button. "Dispatch, this is Sheriff Hayes, come in." Silence. Then my voice again came through the speaker, softer this time. Closer. You already did. My stomach dropped. I looked back at the hole in the floor. The water wasn't just moving now. It was rising. Slowly, like something underneath was standing up. I backed away without thinking, boots scraping the wood. "Who's there?" I said louder this time, too loud. The church answered with nothing but that slow water sound. Then something happened that I still can't explain cleanly. The water below stopped moving. Completely. Like it froze in place. And every sound in the church died with it. Even the insects outside. Even the wind. Total silence. That kind of silence isn't natural. It presses into your ears until you start hearing things that aren't there. I stood there, flashlight aimed at the hole, waiting for something to move. Nothing did. For 10 seconds. Maybe 20. Then the water surface split open from underneath. Not like a splash. Like something opening an eye. And from inside the flooded chamber below, a light appeared. Dim yellow. Swaying. A lantern. The same kind I saw out on Mile Creek nights ago. The one that moved deeper into the reeds every time I followed it. Except now it was inside the church. Below me. Impossible distance. Impossible place. And behind it, something moved. A shape. Slow, tall, not fully formed in the dark water, like a body trying to remember how to exist. I stepped back again, but my boot hit something behind me. I turned fast. Nothing there. But the footprints were. Wet prints forming in the dust around me. Barefoot. Fresh. Moving in a slow circle, just like the sound had been doing earlier. My breath got shallow. I raised my flashlight again, trying to follow the prints. They led straight toward the altar. Then stopped. Right in front of it. Like whoever made them had turned and looked at me. From the altar area, I heard a soft splash. Something climbed up. Slow. Heavy. Water dripping onto old wood. I should have left. That's what every part of me screamed. But I didn't move. Because I finally understood something I didn't want to understand. This church wasn't abandoned. It was waiting. A shape stepped into the dim light. Not fully human. Not fully anything. Its skin looked like soaked cloth stretched over bone that wasn't arranged right. Like the body had been rebuilt wrong and left too long in water. And its head, it turned toward me. Slowly. Too slowly. I felt my throat tighten as I realized something worse than seeing it. It was trying to look like someone I knew. Like it was choosing a face from memory. My radio suddenly screamed static so loud I almost dropped it. Then right through the noise, a voice broke through. Dispatch. But wrong. Stretched. Drowned. Unit 7 lost in water. I backed away again, finally braking. My boots hit the broken floor near the hole. The lantern below flickered brighter. And the thing on the altar took one step forward. The wood groaned under its weight. Then it spoke. Not in words at first. Just breath. Wet, heavy breath. Then slowly it formed sound. Sheriff. My name again. But this time, it didn't come from the radio. It came from inside the walls. All around me. Every direction at once. I swung my flashlight wildly, but the beam didn't feel like it was helping anymore. It felt like I was revealing myself instead of the room. The water below the church rose again. Fast this time. Slamming against the broken floor. Hands started pushing up through it. Not human hands. Too long, too still, moving like they had learned motion from memory, not life. I stumbled back toward the door, but the footprints in the dust were now behind me again, closing in, surrounding me. And then I saw the lantern rise fully out of the water, floating upward through the hole in the floor. Impossible. It didn't break anything. It didn't touch wood. It just came through like the space wasn't solid anymore. It hovered at chest level, right in front of me. And inside the glass, I saw something I wish I hadn't. A reflection. Not mine. A man standing in my place, wearing my uniform but soaked and swollen like he had been underwater for days. He smiled at me, slowly, like he had been waiting a long time for this exact moment. Behind me, the church doors slammed shut. No wind, no force I could see, just shut. The lantern light brightened. The water below stopped rising. Everything stopped moving again, like the whole place was holding its breath for what came next. The reflection in the lantern lifted its hand and pointed downward, not at the floor, at me. And I felt it. A pull. The same pull from the water earlier. But now it wasn't in my hand. It was in my chest. Like something underneath, the church had finally decided I was close enough. Close enough to take. I don't remember falling. Only the sound. Water rushing where there shouldn't have been water. And a voice calm now, almost patient. Right before everything went dark. Now you stay. And somewhere below the church, the lantern kept burning. The smoke shouldn't have been there. That was my first thought. Thin, gray, rising through the swamp trees like someone had lit a fire in the middle of a grave. I stopped the patrol truck right there on Highway 37 and just stared at it. No cabins in that zone, no camps, no hunters, not legally, not since the land got marked after the flood years back. Still, the smoke moved like it was fresh, like it had just been made. My radio cracked once, then went quiet again. That was already wrong. Out here, it always had noise, even if it was just static and distant calls. I reached for the mic anyway. Dispatch, this is Unit 14. I'm seeing smoke in Sector 3 Swamp Line. Confirm any activity in the area. Silence. Then a faint click. Not a voice. Just a click like someone tapped the radio from the other side. I frowned. Dispatch, repeat last. Nothing. The swamp around me was too still. Even the bugs had gone quiet, like they were listening too. I stepped out of the truck. Mud pulled at my boots immediately, thick and slow, like the ground didn't want to let go. The smoke was deeper in the trees, not far, maybe half a mile in. But something about it made that distance feel wrong, like it changed every time I looked away. I started walking. At first it was normal swamp noise, water sucking under my steps, branches snapping under pressure. Then I noticed something else. No birds, not even frogs. Just that smoke rising between the trees like a signal. A warning, or an invitation. I checked my flashlight even though it was still daylight. Old habit, you don't trust swamp light. Halfway in, I saw something on a tree. A mark, scratched into the bark. Fresh, too fresh. It looked like a number at first. Then I realized it wasn't a number. It was a date, but it didn't match anything I knew. The last digit kept changing when I blinked. I stepped closer. The bark was wet around it, like someone had just carved it minutes ago. Behind me, something shifted in the water. I turned fast. Nothing there. But the water ripples didn't stop. They moved outward like something had just gone under. I swallowed and kept going. The smoke was thicker now. Closer. And there was something underneath it. A shape. Low to the ground. At first, I thought it was a tent. Then it moved. Slow, dragging, like something crawling, but not fully deciding how to stand yet. My hand went to my holster without thinking. I didn't draw yet. Not until I knew. But I was already telling myself I wouldn't like what I saw. I stepped closer through the brush. The swamp opened into a small clearing. And that's when I saw the fire. Except it wasn't a fire like normal fires. No orange flame. Just pale blue smoke curling up from black ash. And around it, people, or what looked like people, sitting too still, too straight, like they were waiting for something to tell them to move again. I stopped breathing for a second, because I noticed something worse. They weren't all fully there. Some of them looked like outlines that hadn't finished forming, like the swamp had tried to rebuild them and gave up halfway. One of them turned its head, slow, too slow, and looked right at me. Even from that distance, I felt it. Not just seeing, recognizing, like it had been waiting specifically for me to arrive. My radio crackled again, this time louder. A voice broke through. Not dispatch, not anyone I knew. Just a man's voice, calm, close. Unit 14, you're late. I froze. I looked at my radio. Who is this? No answer. Then the fire shifted. The smoke bent sideways like something invisible had walked through it. And the figures around it started turning. All at once. Slow. Unified. Like they had been connected this whole time. My instinct screamed at me to back out. But my legs didn't move yet. Because I saw something in the fire. A uniform. Lying near the ash. Half burned. Mine. I stepped back instantly. Boots sliding in mud. Heart going too fast. That's when the voice came again. Not from the radio this time. From the smoke itself. Sheriff. I raised my weapon now. Fully. Show yourself. Silence. Then laughter. Soft. Wet. Like it came from underwater. The fire died a little. And I saw them more clearly. The people around it weren't sitting. They were sinking. Slowly. Like the ground beneath them was opening up just enough to take them piece by piece. One of them lifted an arm toward me. Not a wave. A reach. Begging. Or warning. I couldn't tell anymore. My radio went dead completely. No static. No clicks. Just empty silence. And that's when I noticed something behind me. The swamp water had stopped moving. Completely still. Like it was holding its breath. I turned slowly and saw my footprints in the mud. But they weren't the only ones. There were others. Fresh. Walking alongside mine. Matching every step I had taken. Except I was alone. I backed up one step. The second set of footprints stepped back too. Exactly at the same time. Like something invisible was standing inside my shadow. My throat went dry. I whispered, "This isn't real." But the smoke answered immediately. "It is where you are now." The figures in the clearing started standing. One by one. Still too slow. Still wrong. Their bodies stretching like memory trying to become flesh. And the fire rose again. Higher this time. Bright enough to light the trees. Bright enough to show me the path behind them. A path I didn't see before. Going deeper into the swamp. Straight into water that looked too dark to be normal. The closest figure stepped forward. It had no face. Just a smooth, wet surface where one should have been. but it tilted its head toward me like it could still see. And it pointed, not at the fire, not at the swamp, at me. The smoke thickened between us, and I heard it again. My name, not spoken, not shouted, just remembered, like the swamp had known it long before I was ever born. I took a step back without thinking, then another, and that's when the ground under the clearing shifted. Not collapsing, opening, slowly, like something underneath had finally decided it was time to breathe. The figures started sinking faster now. No panic, no struggle, just acceptance. Like this was normal. Like I was the only thing out of place. The last thing I saw before I turned and ran was the uniform in the fire lifting slightly, as if something inside it had just stood up. Behind me, the smoke followed, not drifting, chasing, and the radio, dead in my hand, came alive one last time. With a whisper so close, it felt like it was inside my ear. Don't leave the trail, Unit 14. I didn't look back, but I knew whatever was in that swamp had just learned my direction. I first saw them through the trees, just shapes at the edge of the swamp road, still watching. At first, I thought it was deer. Then one of them moved. Too human for deer, too wrong for anything I knew. I slowed the truck without meaning to. My hand hovered near the radio, but I didn't call it in yet. Something about the way they stood made me feel like speaking would be noticed. The swamp around Highway 37 was already strange after what I saw at the smoke site. But this was different. This felt like it had been waiting longer. There were 5 of them, maybe 6. Hard to count when they didn't fully stand like normal people. They were spread out between the cypress trees, each one holding something in their hands. Long shapes, rifles or bows maybe. Hunters. That was my first real thought. But then I noticed the second thing. None of them had faces. Not masks. Not hoods. Just nothing where a face should be. Like the swamp had erased that part of them. My throat tightened. I whispered dispatch. I've got possible hunters in restricted swamp zone. Request identification. Only static answered me. No click this time. No voice. Just empty noise like the radio didn't care anymore. I stepped out of the truck anyway. Boots sank into wet ground immediately. The air felt heavier the closer I got to them. The hunters didn't move. They just stood there, pointed slightly toward me. Not aiming. Not threatening. Just aware. Like they already knew I was there before I arrived. I raised my flashlight. The beam cut through the fog between us. And the moment it hit them, something felt wrong. Because the light didn't show faces. It didn't even show shadows where faces should be. It just bent around that part of their heads. Like the swamp refused to let me see. One of them tilted its head slowly. Not human slow. Like time was stretched around it. I took one step forward, then stopped, because every hunter moved their head at the exact same time. All of them turning toward me, perfectly synced. No delay, no hesitation. Like they were not separate people. Like they were one thing, wearing multiple bodies. My hand tightened around my flashlight. Identify yourselves, I said again, louder this time. My voice didn't feel right in the swamp air. It sounded thin, small. One of them lifted its hand, not pointing a weapon, just lifting it slowly toward its face, as if it was going to remove something. But there was nothing there to remove. Then it spoke. Its voice came from everywhere at once, not from one mouth, from all directions of the swamp. You already saw us once, Sheriff. My stomach dropped. That wasn't possible. I had never seen them before tonight. At least, I didn't think I had. The radio on my belt crackled again. This time stronger, clearer, but wrong. My own voice came through it. Calm, tired, like it had already lived this moment. Don't look at them too long. I froze. The hunters didn't move, but the fog between us thickened, like it was listening, like it was reacting. I turned my flashlight off instinctively. The moment the beam died, I felt them shift, not physically moving, just changing presence, like something about being seen was the only thing holding them still. I backed up one step. A stick snapped behind me. I spun fast. Nothing there, but the swamp water rippled in a perfect circle, like something had just stepped into it. Then the hunters did something that made my skin go cold. They raised their weapons, slowly, not aiming at me, aiming into the trees around me. All at once, perfect timing, like they were responding to something I couldn't see. I whispered, "What are you aiming at?" No answer, but then one of them spoke again. Closer this time. "Not at you." A pause. Then, "Not yet." Something moved in the trees behind me. I felt it before I saw it. That pressure in the air, like the swamp suddenly got smaller. I turned my head slightly, just enough to see darkness between branches. No shape, no outline, just wrong emptiness where something should have been. The hunters didn't fire. They just stood there, locked in position, weapons steady, waiting, like they were holding something back, or holding something in. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but my feet didn't move fast enough. The radio on my belt started speaking again. This time it wasn't my voice. It was someone else. A man, breathing hard, drowned between words. "Unit 14, do not engage. Repeat, do not." The message cut off with a sound like water filling a throat. Silence again. The hunters lowered their weapons at the exact same time. All of them. Perfect sync. Like a signal had ended. Then one of them stepped forward. Slow. Careful. It stopped just outside the reach of my flashlight beam, even though the light wasn't on. That's when I realized something worse. They didn't need light to see me. It tilted its head slightly, and I swear it was studying me. Not like prey, like recognition, like I had been placed here for a reason. "You carry it," the voice said. I frowned. "Carry what?" No answer. Instead, one of the hunters raised its hand again, this time pointing behind me. I didn't want to look, but I did. The swamp behind me was darker than before, thicker, like something had closed around the road I came in on. The exit wasn't there anymore. Just trees, water, and something moving underneath it. When I turned back, the hunters were closer. Not walking, not stepping, just nearer than before. Like distance didn't matter anymore. One of them leaned slightly forward, and in a softer voice, almost human, it said, "The swamp remembers you now." My chest tightened. "I've never been here before," I said. But even as I said it, I didn't believe it fully, because something in my memory felt off, like a page missing, like a night I was not allowed to recall. The hunter didn't respond. Instead, all 5 of them lowered their weapons completely. And for the first time, I saw something behind them, deeper in the swamp, a shape standing still in the water. not fully visible, but tall, watching. The hunters didn't turn. They didn't need to. One of them spoke again. Quiet now, almost like a warning meant only for me. If it finds you first, we stop existing. I felt my breath catch. What is it? The swamp went silent. Even the water stopped moving. And in that silence, the hunters did something I didn't expect. They stepped aside, like they were making a path. Not for me, but for whatever was behind them. The shape in the water moved closer. Slow, unnatural. The air got colder. My flashlight flickered in my hand, even though it was off. And the hunters all turned their empty faces toward me one last time. Not fear, not warning, just resignation. Like they had already lost this moment before it even began. The voice came again, all of them speaking together now. Run, Sheriff. And I did. Not because I understood, but because something in the swamp finally felt awake enough to follow. The radio hissed before I even spoke. A long, wet burst of static, then a K9 handler's voice broke through it. Sheriff, you need to see this. The dogs, they won't go forward. I slowed the truck without thinking. The tires rolled into soft mud, deeper than it should have been for a road. My headlights cut through thick swamp fog, but there was nothing ahead except twisted trees and black water sitting too still. Then I saw them. 2 patrol units parked crooked on what used to be a dirt path, doors open, flashlights shaking in deputies' hands, and the dogs. They were not barking. They were backing away. Big German shepherds trained for cadaver scent work, now whining low, pulling against their leashes like something invisible was dragging them backward. I stepped out. The air hit me like something old, wet earth, rot, and something underneath it I couldn't name, like burnt wood buried in swamp water for too long. One of the handlers saw me and raised a hand. Sheriff, they stopped here, won't go another step. I looked past them. That's when I saw the mound. At first it looked natural, just a raised hump of earth in the swamp, but the shape was wrong, too round, too deliberate, like someone had pressed the ground upward from below and left it that way. And around it, the grass was gone. Not cut, not burned. Pressed down flat like something heavy had been sitting there for years. One of the dogs suddenly snapped its head toward the mound and let out a sound I've never heard before from an animal. Not a bark, not a whine. A broken, choking noise like it understood something I didn't. The handler cursed. That's it, that's the spot they refuse. My hand went to my radio. Dispatch, confirm location history for Grid 78 Delta. Any known burial sites, structures, anything in that area. Static answered first. Then a voice I didn't expect. Slow, tired, almost unsure. There's nothing listed, Sheriff. That area's been redlined since the 70s. Old flood zone. No recorded structures. I looked at the mound again. Nothing recorded. But something was there. Because the dogs weren't reacting like there was nothing. They were reacting like something was still there. Alive. I stepped closer. Immediately, one of the K9s dropped to the ground, shaking so hard its leash went slack. The handler tried to pull it forward, but the dog refused to stand. Its eyes stayed locked on the mound. Not blinking, just staring like it recognized something buried inside it. I crouched near the edge of the raised soil. That's when I noticed the markings. Not natural, not animal. Lines carved into the earth, half covered in moss. Circles layered inside circles, and symbols scratched so deep they had stayed even after years of rain. My stomach tightened. I'd seen stuff like this once before. Not here, not officially. Old case files, Forgotten reports, deputies who quit and never explained why. But this was fresher. Some of the grooves still held dark residue, not mud. Something darker. One of the deputies behind me whispered, "This wasn't here last time we checked this grid." I didn't answer, because I was staring at something else now. Footprints. Small ones. Human. Leading from the swamp water straight up the mound. And stopping at the top. Like whoever made them never came back down. The radio crackled again. But this time it wasn't dispatch. It was a sound. Breathing. Close, wet, right against the mic. Then a whisper came through. Not words at first, just broken syllables like someone trying to speak underwater. The K9 closest to me suddenly snapped its head toward my truck and started barking violently. But not at the mound. At the radio. The handler grabbed it. "Sheriff, turn that off, turn it off now." I yanked the radio volume down, but the sound didn't stop. It came through the air instead. Soft, carrying over the swamp like it was being spoken from inside the water itself. I froze, because now I could hear it too. My name. Not shouted. Not clear. Just formed slowly by something that didn't know how to speak properly. As sure if. My throat went dry. I stepped back from the mound, and that's when the mud near its base shifted. Not like wind. Not like settling ground. Like something underneath had turned its body. The dogs lost it. All at once. They began pulling backwards so hard the handlers nearly fell. One leash snapped clean. The K9 bolted straight into the swamp, refusing every command. "Hold them," I shouted, but my voice didn't carry right. Because the swamp had gone too quiet. Even the insects stopped. Like the entire place was listening. Then the mound cracked. A soft, wet sound. Not loud, not dramatic. Just enough. Like a breath being let out after a very long time. I stepped forward before I realized I was doing it. The deputies shouted behind me, but their voices felt far away now, drowned under something else rising from the ground. The crack widened, and something dark pushed through the soil. Not fully formed, not fully anything, just shape, human shape, wrongly put together. The handler next to me muttered, "That's not possible." But I wasn't looking at him anymore. I was looking at the mound opening like a wound. And I realized something that made my chest tighten hard. The footprints hadn't been going up. They had been coming out. From below. The radio in my pocket turned itself back on, even though I had shut it down. And now the voice was clearer. Closer. Almost pleased. "SS Sheriff, you found it." The mound shifted again. And this time I saw movement inside the soil. Not digging out. Rising. Like something that had been waiting for the right moment to remember how to stand. One of the dogs screamed. Not barked. Screamed. And I turned just in time to see it staring at the mound like it finally understood what it was smelling. Death that wasn't dead. The handler dropped the leash. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." The mound split further. A pale hand pressed up through the mud. Fingers spread wide. Slow. Deliberate. Like it was greeting the air for the first time in years. My legs finally moved backward. But the voice on the radio followed. Not through sound now. Through my head. "You came all this way for the drowned, but we were never in the water." The hand gripped the edge of the mound. Pulled. And something underneath started to climb out. The swamp water around us rippled without wind. The dogs were gone now. Just gone. No barking, no running back. only silence where their panic used to be. And I knew, standing there in that frozen patch of swamp, that this wasn't a burial site. It was a door, and we had just opened it. As the thing inside pushed higher, I realized the radio wasn't transmitting anymore. It was receiving. Something that had been waiting under Highway 37 far longer than any missing report could explain. And when it finally lifted its head toward me, it spoke my name again. But this time, it sounded like it had been practicing it for years. The fog didn't roll in. It arrived like something being poured over the swamp. Thick, heavy, alive. One moment I could see the tree line. The next, it was gone. Just white pressure pressing against my windshield like the world had been erased beyond a few feet. The boat engine kept cutting in and out. Not broken, not failing. Just hesitant, like it didn't want to move forward. Visibility's dropping fast, my deputy said from the front seat. His voice sounded smaller than it should have. I didn't answer right away. Because I was listening. Something was already wrong. The swamp wasn't quiet like before. It was crowded. Not with sound, with absence of sound. Like everything living had stepped back to make space for something else. Then I heard it. A scream. Far off. Sharp. Human. My hand tightened on the wheel instinctively. Did you hear that? I asked. The deputy nodded slowly. Yeah. Another scream followed. Closer. But not in distance. In direction. Like the sound wasn't traveling through air. It was traveling through water. The boat drifted forward on its own for a second, current pulling us deeper into the fog bank. Then the radio cracked to life. No one touched it. Just static, then a voice cutting through like it was underwater. Don't go further. The deputy leaned forward. That's not dispatch. I already knew that. Because the voice was wrong. Not just distorted. Layered. Like more than one person was speaking at the same time, slightly out of sync. Then the scream came again. This time behind us. We both turned. Nothing. Just fog swallowing the swamp. But the water beside the boat rippled. Slow. Deliberate. Like something had just surfaced, but hadn't broken through yet. Shut off the engine, I said quietly. The deputy hesitated. Sir. Now. He did it. Silence hit immediately. And that's when I realized the worst part. We could still hear breathing. Not ours. Around us. Every direction. The fog started shifting in shapes. Not wind. Not movement. Patterns. Like something was walking through it but not disturbing it fully. Just passing through layers. Then another scream. So close this time, it felt like it came from inside the boat. The deputy jerked backward. That came from. Something hit the water beside us. Hard. We both aimed our flashlights instantly. The beams cut into the fog and caught something for half a second. A hand. White. Pale. Half submerged. Then gone again. I felt my stomach drop. Because hands don't rise like that in swamp water unless something is pulling them. The radio hissed again. This time clearer. A man's voice, panicked, breaking. Unit 14, we are surrounded. I repeat, we are surrounded. The deputy froze. Unit 14 is the missing patrol from last year. I didn't respond. Because the screams were now everywhere. Not random anymore. Organized. Like they were forming a circle. Around us. The fog thickened again, and I realized something terrible. We weren't moving through it. It was moving around us. The boat drifted without control. Slow. Straightforward. towards something I couldn't see yet. The screams grew louder, and now I could hear words inside them. Not clear, but familiar. Names, orders, radio codes, fragments of old dispatch calls repeating like broken recordings. Then the deputy whispered, "Sheriff, look." I followed his flashlight, and my blood went cold. Shapes in the fog, standing in the water, not fully solid, not fully gone, just outlines of people arranged in a wide arc ahead of us. Dozens, maybe more, all facing us, but not moving, not breathing, just waiting. The boat drifted closer without my control. My grip tightened on the steering wheel, but it didn't matter. The engine was off. The water was deciding where we went. Another scream erupted from the left, then the right, then behind us. Like the entire swamp had become a recording of pain, replaying from different directions. The deputy raised his weapon slightly. "Sir, those aren't reflections." I knew, because reflections don't stand in water, and they don't block fog. We got closer, slowly, too slowly. The figures became clearer. Uniform shapes, old patrol gear, some torn, some missing pieces, but all of them facing us like they had been waiting for this exact moment for a very long time. Then one of them moved, just slightly, a head tilt, and every other figure followed. At the same time, my throat went dry, because I recognized something. Their radios, all of them were still crackling faintly, like they were still online, still connected, still listening. The boat stopped moving, dead still, like it had reached the center of whatever this was. The fog thinned just enough for me to see what was ahead, and I wish it hadn't. The water dropped suddenly into a shallow basin of black mud and broken wood. Patrol boats, dozens of them, stacked sunken, half swallowed by swamp earth. Old unit markings faded but still visible, and between them bodies, not decomposed like normal drownings, preserved wrong, too intact, too present, like they had never fully left. The deputy whispered, "This is where they all went missing." But I wasn't looking at the bodies. I was looking at the center, where something stood waist-deep in the water, still, listening, waiting. And as the fog shifted again, it turned its head toward us, slowly, like it already knew we were coming. The radio in my vest clicked on by itself, and a voice came through that wasn't any of ours. "Calm, close, patient. You finally arrived." The deputy stepped back. "Sheriff, what is that?" I didn't answer, because I couldn't tell if it was speaking from the swamp, or from inside the radios of every dead unit around us. The figures in the water began to move again, but not toward us, around us, forming a tighter circle, closing in. The scream stopped, all at once, which somehow made it worse, because silence meant they were listening now. The thing in the center lifted its hand slightly, and every radio in the swamp answered at once. A single tone, long, low, like a signal being completed after a very long time. The deputy whispered, barely breathing now, "Sir, we're not surrounded." I looked at him. He was staring at the water now. Not the figures, not the swamp, the reflection. And I saw it too. Something was already inside our boat, waiting under the surface. And when I finally looked down, the water moved back at me like it knew my name better than I did. The transfer papers said Station 6 was closed. Shut down years ago. Flood damage, no personnel assigned. So when I saw the lights on, I almost didn't stop. But something about Highway 37 makes you stop anyway. The road doesn't feel like a road, more like something cut through the swamp and never healed, trees leaning too close, water sitting too still on both sides, and that silence, not natural silence, the kind that feels like it's waiting for you to speak first. Station 6 appeared out of the fog like it had been there the whole time. Wooden structure, raised on old stilts, half swallowed by vines. A rusted radio tower leaning slightly like it was tired of standing. And the lights were on. Warm yellow. Moving. Like someone was inside. I killed the engine and just sat there for a moment. That's when I noticed something else. The water around the station wasn't moving with the wind. It was moving inward. Slow. Like everything was being pulled toward the building. My radio crackled once, then went silent again. I stepped out anyway. Mud swallowed my boots immediately. The smell hit next. Wet wood, old oil, and something underneath it I couldn't place. Something metallic, like blood that had been washed too many times. The stairs to Station 6 creaked before I even touched them, which meant either the place was alive, or something inside already knew I was coming. I climbed. Each step felt heavier than the last. Halfway up, I noticed scratches on the railing. Not random. Names. Carved into the wood. Some fresh enough that the splinters hadn't darkened yet. That's when my first question formed. If this place was abandoned, who was still writing on it? The door wasn't locked. It opened before I touched it. Just a soft push inward, like it had been waiting politely. Inside was worse. Everything was still running. Old monitors flickered on a desk, paper logs neatly stacked, coffee pot half full like someone had just stepped out. But the air was wrong. Too humid, too warm, like the room was breathing. I called out once. No answer. Only the faint sound of radio static coming from somewhere deeper, inside the station. Then I saw the wall of radios. Dozens of them. All powered on. All tuned to different channels. And every single one of them was repeating the same thing. My call sign. Over and over. But not in my voice. In something almost like mine, but slightly delayed. Like it was learning how to copy me. I stepped closer. One radio suddenly cut through the noise. Clear. Direct. Deputy, you're late. My hand froze halfway to the console. Because that voice wasn't coming through the speaker. It was coming from behind me. I turned fast. Nothing. Just the open door, the swamp, the fog. But the air felt tighter now, like the station had just closed its distance around me. I checked the logs on the desk. The last entry was dated 7 years ago. But the ink was still fresh. One line only. Station 6 remains active. Do not respond to transmissions after sunset. I looked at the window instinctively. It was dark outside now, which made no sense. I hadn't been here that long. Had I? The radio wall suddenly crackled louder. All at once, every device shifting frequency in sync like something had grabbed the entire network at the same time. Then a new transmission came through. Not from one radio. From all of them. Why did you come back alone? I backed up slowly. My boots hit something. I looked down. A footprint in the dust. Fresh. Bare. Facing the inside of the station. Not mine. Not old. Something had been standing here before me. Watching me enter. The monitors flickered again. and for a split second, I saw something on the screen. Not camera footage. A reflection. Me, standing at the door. But behind me, someone else was already inside the station. Standing too still. Too close. I turned instantly. Empty room. But now the radios had stopped. All except one. The one closest to me. It whispered something I didn't understand at first. Just broken words. Like it was speaking underwater. Then it repeated it again. Slower. Clearer. Don't turn around. My body didn't move. But my eyes drifted anyway. Just slightly. Toward the reflection in the black monitor screen. And I saw it. Standing directly behind me now. Not fully formed. Not fully human. Just shape and posture and wrongness pressed into the outline of a man. Its head tilted slowly. Like it was curious about how long it would take me to realize it was already too late. The radio crackled one last time. And the voice inside it sighed like it had been waiting for years. Station 6 always accepts new operators. The lights in the room flickered. And for the first time, I understood why the swamp around this place was always moving inward. It wasn't water being pulled in. It was everything else being invited. The thing behind me took one step closer. I could hear it now. Not breathing. Listening. Like it was learning the sound of me. And the last working radio on the desk turned itself on without touch. Repeating my name. Softly. Patiently. Like it had already added me to the logbook. The floorboard wasn't supposed to move. That was the first lie I told myself. Just an old station, old wood, swamp humidity making things shift. But when I stepped on it again, it gave a soft, hollow sound, like something underneath was waiting to be found. The radio in Station 6 had been silent for nearly an hour. That should have been comforting. It was, because silence here didn't feel empty. It felt stored, like something had been turned off, but not gone. I crouched near the corner of the room, flashlight sweeping low. The beam caught dust, old boots, faded maps pinned to corkboard walls. Everything looked normal in a way that made it worse. Normal meant it was hiding something better. I pressed my fingers along the edge of the loose board. It lifted too easily. No resistance. Like it had been opened before. Recently. That thought alone made my throat tighten. I pulled it up. A small gap beneath the floor. Dark damp. And stuffed inside, a bundle of papers tied with old rope. My hand hesitated. For a moment, I just stared into that space. Because it felt like the station was watching me decide. I finally reached in. Cold wood scraped my knuckles as I pulled the bundle out. It wasn't just papers. It was a journal. No cover title, no official label. Just thick pages, warped from moisture, bound together like someone had hidden them in a hurry and never come back for them. The first page was dated. Years back. But the ink looked too fresh. Like it had been written yesterday. I opened it and immediately felt my stomach drop. Deputy Langley, Patrol 14, did not return after responding to swamp audio disturbance. I blinked slowly. That name meant something. I just didn't know what yet. I kept reading. Radio log recorded faint music over Channel 3, described as old country tune, slowed down underwater. Subject reported feeling pulled toward sound. My flashlight shook slightly. Music. That word shouldn't mean anything. But here it did. Because I suddenly remembered something I hadn't even noticed earlier. Station 6 had no music systems. No speakers. No old radios capable of playing anything except dispatch. And yet sometimes, it felt like the building itself was humming. I turned the page. Another entry. Different handwriting. Unit 9 entered marsh perimeter at 02:17. At 02:41 heard music coming from swamp water. Requested extraction. By the time backup arrived, only the boat radio remained, still playing music. My mouth went dry. I stopped reading for a second, because I realized something worse. Every entry wasn't just about disappearances. It was about pattern. Same sound, same response, same ending. I flipped forward. More pages, more names, more dates, but all of them had the same structure. Entry, music, response, silence. Like the swamp was repeating a process. Like it had learned how to take people in a specific order. Then I saw something that made me sit back hard. A page marked with red ink. Not old red. Fresh. It read, "Do not follow the music under any circumstance. It does not come from outside." My hand froze on the page. Something shifted in the station behind me. Not sound. Pressure. Like the air itself had leaned closer. I didn't turn. Not yet. I kept reading. Next entry. Deputy Harris reported hearing singing in the water. He described it as my mother's voice, but slowed and wrong. He entered the swamp alone. His body was never recovered. His radio continued transmitting for 11 hours after disappearance. I swallowed hard, because I had heard something similar earlier. Not singing, not clearly, but something in the fog. Something that almost felt familiar. I closed the journal for a moment. My hands were colder than they should have been. Then I heard it. Very faint. Outside the station. Not loud enough to be real, but too structured to be wind. A melody. Slow. Dragging. Like it was coming through water. I stood up too fast, flashlight snapping toward the window. Nothing there. Just swamp fog. Still water. But the journal in my hands vibrated slightly. No, not vibrated. It was reacting. Like something nearby was activating it. My pulse started rising. I opened it again. Next page. Blank. Except for one sentence written at the bottom. "You are close enough to hear it now." I didn't realize I was stepping backward until my heel hit the wall. The station felt smaller. Not physically, but like the space inside it had tightened. The radio on the desk clicked once. Then again. And a voice came through. Soft. Almost gentle. "Deputy." I turned toward it instantly. Static filled the room. Then the voice again. Closer now. "Why did you stop listening?" My throat tightened. Because I hadn't been listening to anything. Not intentionally. But now I wasn't sure anymore. Because somewhere inside my memory, I could almost hear it. That same melody. Like it had been there all along. Just under everything else. The journal slipped slightly in my hands. Another page had turned on its own. No wind. No movement. Just changed. New entry. Written in different ink again. Sound travels differently in swamp water. It does not fade, it sinks. I backed toward the stairs without realizing it. The radio continued. Some deputies thought it was a distress signal. Static crackled, but it was never asking for help. The melody outside grew slightly clearer. Closer. Now I could almost follow it. Which was the problem? Because my brain was trying to. trying to match it, trying to recognize it. That's when I noticed something on the wall map. A cluster of red pins, all around Highway 37, all leading toward Station 6. Like everything had been circling this place long before I ever arrived. The radio voice softened again. They followed it thinking it came from victims. A pause, but it was never victims making it. The station lights flickered. Once, twice, and in that flicker, I saw something standing at the bottom of the stairs. Not fully formed, just shape. Listening, waiting. The melody outside stopped. Complete silence followed, which should have been relief, but wasn't, because silence after sound feels like something holding its breath. The radio gave one final burst of static, and the voice returned one last time. This is where you learn the song. The lights went out, and in the darkness, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't remembering the music. I was starting to hear it for the first time. The first knock came when the water wasn't even moving. Just still black swamp, no wind, no ripples, nothing. I stood on the dock with my flashlight pointed down, feeling like an idiot for even being out there. The station behind me was half lit, buzzing like it didn't trust itself to stay on. Then, knock-a-knock. Not loud, not urgent, just patient. Like whoever was out there knew I would listen. I froze before I even understood why. My hand tightened on the railing. The wood was wet, but not from rain. It felt older than rain, like it had been soaked for years and never dried once. I pointed the light out across the water. Nothing. Just black swamp stretching into fog. "Hello," I called out. My voice sounded too small, like it didn't belong in that space. No answer. Then the radio on my belt crackled. One sharp burst of static. I almost laughed at myself, probably just interference. Old station, old equipment. But then the knock came again. Closer this time. Knock-a-knock. Right under the dock. I stepped back without thinking. My boot hit the edge of the wooden planks hard enough to make it creak. That's when I noticed something strange. The water wasn't just still. It was too still, like it was holding its breath. I raised the flashlight again, slowly lowering it toward the gaps between the planks. The beam cut into the darkness. For a second, I saw something pale under the surface. A shape. Not floating. Not sinking. Just waiting. I blinked and it was gone. My throat went dry. I told myself it was swamp debris, driftwood, trash, anything normal. Then the knock came again. This time, 3 hits. Slow, deliberate. Like someone was testing the wood. I stepped back onto the dock ramp, one hand already on my holster without thinking. My mind kept trying to label it. Animal, boat, current, anything that made sense. But nothing in this swamp moved like that. And then I heard it. Not from the water. From behind me. A soft dragging sound. I turned fast. The station porch light flickered. For half a second, I saw footprints on the wet boards. Bare feet. Fresh. I hadn't been off the dock since I arrived. My skin went cold in a way I can't explain. Not fear yet, something worse. Confusion that doesn't resolve. The radio crackled again. This time it wasn't static. It was breathing. Slow, wet, close to the mic. I pulled it off my belt immediately. Dispatch, come in, I've got. The breathing stopped. Silence. Then a voice came through. But it wasn't dispatch. It was a woman. Soft, almost calm. You hear it now. I didn't answer, I couldn't. Because I realized something that made my stomach drop. That voice wasn't coming through the radio. It was coming from the dock, right below me. The knock returned again, harder this time. The wood under my boots trembled slightly, like something was pressing up from beneath. I backed toward the station door, my flashlight shaking now. The beam caught the edge of the dock again. And for just a second, I saw fingers, not grabbing, just resting on the wood, like someone was holding themselves up from underneath. Then gone. I slammed into the station door and got inside fast, locking it behind me. My breath was loud in my ears, too loud for such a quiet place. The lights inside flickered harder now, like they were reacting to what I didn't know. I grabbed the radio again. Dispatch, respond. I have an active. I don't know what I have, but something is outside Station 6 dock. Only static. No response. Just that low electrical hiss that sounds like something trying to speak, but forgetting how. Then, knock-a-knock. From inside the station. I stopped breathing. My eyes went to the floor immediately. Wooden boards, old, soft in places, the kind of floor that always feels like it's hiding something underneath. Another knock. Closer. From under my feet. I stepped back slowly, flashlight aimed down. Nothing visible. But the sound was clear now. Something was moving under the station. Not fast. Not aggressive. Just circling. Waiting for me to settle. I whispered without meaning to, "What do you want?" The reply came instantly. From everywhere at once. "You already came here." The lights flickered off. Total darkness. My flashlight became the only thing holding reality together. And then it went out too. Not dimming. Not fading. Just turning off. Like something had decided I didn't need it anymore. Now I was in pure dark. No light, no sound except the swamp pressing in around the walls. Then the knock stopped. Everything stopped. Even the breathing. For a moment, I thought it was over. That maybe I was just losing it. Stress, isolation, old station nerves. Then I heard footsteps inside the station. Slow. Bare. Walking across the floor I was standing on. I backed into the wall, hands shaking as I reached for my backup light. My fingers couldn't find it fast enough. The footsteps stopped right in front of me. I couldn't see anything, but I could feel presence. Close enough that the air felt different, thicker, warm in a way that didn't belong in a damp swamp station. Then something spoke, right in front of my face. Not through radio. Not through walls. Just there. "You're the first one who stayed." My breath caught. I forced myself to speak. First one of what? A pause. Then, "We always knock, they never answer." My flashlight suddenly turned back on by itself. I didn't touch it. It flickered once and stabilized. And in the beam, there was nothing. No person. No shape. Just empty station floor. But the footprints were there now. Circling me. Bare, wet, new. Like someone had been walking around me while I couldn't see. The radio crackled again on the counter. This time I didn't reach for it. It spoke anyway. Dispatch voice. Flat. Controlled. Too calm. "Deputy, confirm your status." I stared at it. My mouth felt like it didn't belong to me. "I'm here," I said. A pause. Then, "That station has no assigned unit, no power log, no occupancy record." My eyes snapped to the walls. The flickering lights. The breathing I heard. Everything suddenly felt, documented wrong, like I had stepped into a place that was never meant to be written down. The voice continued. "And deputy, Station 6 was sealed after the flood year. My stomach dropped, because I knew what that meant. This place wasn't just abandoned. It was erased. Another knock came. Not from the dock. Not from under the floor. From inside the radio. One slow hit. Then silence. The last thing I remember clearly was looking down at the floor again and seeing water rising between the cracks. Not flooding in. Rising up. Like the swamp outside had finally decided it didn't need the walls anymore. And something underneath it was finally close enough to step through. The boat came back before I did. I saw it drifting down the channel like it had finally given up pretending someone was inside it. No engine sound, no radio call, no lights. Just a slow, obedient glide through the swamp water. My stomach tightened the moment I recognized it. It was one of ours. Station 6 markings still faint on the side, half covered in mud streaks and algae like the swamp had been trying to rewrite its identity. But there was something wrong immediately. Too wrong to ignore. No crew. No movement. And the boat wasn't damaged. It looked returned. Like it had finished something and decided to come back on its own. I cut the engine of my patrol boat and just watched it drift closer. The fog around us was thick, pressing in like it wanted to hear better. The water didn't ripple the way it should have. Even my own boat felt too heavy, like the swamp was holding it down gently but firmly. Then I noticed the rope, still tied at the bow of the returning boat. Clean knot. Fresh. Like someone had just tied it minutes ago. My radio crackled once. No voice. Just that same wet static I kept hearing since Station 6. I whispered, Unit 7, respond. Silence. The drifting boat touched mine with a soft bump. Not a crash. Not impact. More like a greeting. I swallowed hard and stepped forward carefully, pulling my flashlight up. The beam slid across the deck. Empty. No bodies. No gear scattered. Just wet planks. And one thing that made my skin go cold. Footprints. Bare. Leading from the middle of the boat to the edge. And stopping. Like whoever was there didn't leave. They just stepped out into the water. I leaned closer without thinking. The swamp beneath both boats was darker than usual. Thicker. Like something underneath was blocking the light from going too deep. Then I heard it. A faint sound from inside the returning boat. Not movement. Not metal shifting. Breathing. Slow. Patient. Coming from below the deck. I stepped back immediately, hand going to my weapon, but I didn't raise it. Because I realized something that didn't make sense. The boat was still running. Not engine running. Something else. A low vibration under the wood. Like the swamp itself had learned how to breathe through it. The radio on my belt clicked again. And this time, it stayed open. No static. No interruption. Just a voice. Calm. Too calm. You brought it back. My throat tightened. Who is this? No answer at first. Then the voice came again, closer than before. You always bring it back. I looked around the fog. Nothing. Only swamp water and drifting silence. My flashlight flickered once. And in that blink, I saw someone standing on the far side of the returning boat. Just a shape. Not fully formed, but enough to register as human. Then gone again when the light steadied. My breathing got faster. I stepped onto the returning boat carefully. The wood felt wrong under my boots. Too soft in some places, too firm in others. like it had been walked on for a long time in different directions. I moved toward the center. The footprints were still there, leading me forward, like I was expected. My radio crackled again, but now it wasn't words. It was something else. A recording, my own voice, saying something I didn't remember saying. We found the channel, but it doesn't match the map. I froze. That wasn't today. That wasn't even close to today. The recording continued. Station 6 is not responding. Visibility is low. Something is moving under the water, but it's not fish. My stomach dropped harder with every word. I never reported that. At least, I didn't remember reporting it. The recording ended with a sound. 3 knocks. Slow. Exactly like the dock. The boat shifted slightly under my feet. Not from water movement. From underneath. Something pressing up. I stepped back instinctively. And that's when I saw it. A hatch in the middle of the boat, I swear wasn't there a second ago. Old metal, rusted edges. Opened just enough to let sound escape. Breathing came out of it again. Not one voice. Multiple. Layered. Like people speaking at the same time, without agreeing on the words. I aimed my flashlight down. The beam didn't go far. It stopped halfway. Like something inside was swallowing the light before it could reach the bottom. Then a hand appeared on the edge of the hatch. Wet. Slow. Not climbing. Just holding on. Like it had been waiting for permission. I stepped back so fast I nearly fell. The voice came through the radio again. And this time it wasn't calm. It sounded relieved. Don't leave it. I looked at the empty swamp around me. No one is here, I said out loud. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true anymore. The fog had changed. It wasn't drifting now. It was circling us. The boat. Me. Everything. The water around both boats started moving in a slow spiral. Not current-driven. Intentional. Like something beneath was turning to face us. Then the hatch opened wider, and I saw inside. Not water. Not machinery. Just darkness filled with shapes that didn't stay still long enough to count. And voices, whispering the same thing over and over. You came back. My flashlight died instantly. No flicker. No warning. Just gone. But I could still see the boat. Still see the fog. Because the swamp itself had started glowing faintly now. Like it didn't need my light anymore. Something stepped onto the deck behind me. I didn't turn. Not immediately. Because I already knew what I would see. The same footprints. The same wet sound. Bare feet on wood. Right behind me. Then a voice, close enough that I felt it in my ear. You always come back to the boats. My hands shook. I forced myself to turn. Slow. Careful. Prepared for nothing. But not prepared for what I actually saw. There was no person behind me. Only wet footprints leading past me. Toward the hatch. Like something had walked through me without needing to touch me. The radio clicked one final time. And the last thing it said wasn't a warning. It wasn't even a message. It was confirmation. Unit returned. The swamp below the boat suddenly rose. Not water. Something heavier. Something that knew the shape of a boat better than would ever should. And as the hull tilted slowly under me, I realized the truth I didn't want to accept. The boat didn't bring itself back. It brought me to where it was supposed to go.